For all those who appreciate the work that we're doing here on Standing for Truth, please hit that subscribe button because we are just getting started.
All right, looks like we are live to debunk SciManDan himself. Guys, thanks so much for your patience today, but I promise you it is going to be worth it. Looks like we've already got a packed house with a ton of super chats and super stickers, so I guess the super sticker war begins. Thank you, everybody. Princess Rainbow says that she loves the intro. It's so beautiful. I appreciate the kind words. God bless you, sister. God bless everybody in the chat. This is going to be a lot of fun. We got a ton of information to cover tonight in roughly probably about an hour and a half. We're going to try and keep it as we have been doing when Matt and I do our live with SFT and Raw Matt. So I'm just going through the comment section here because we've got some Jeremy Martin and Raymond. Thanks so much for the super stickers. And Mitchell, brother Mitchell, thanks so much for the $10 super sticker. So you guys are awesome. As I always say, we appreciate the amazing support. And it's why we're able to put out daily content. So that's what I want to cover before we get into the demolishing of SciManDan is this week, okay? Starting on Monday, it's the Genesis Flood Week on Standing for Truth. So it's going to be an information-packed week. Monday, we've got Professor David McQueen, who is going to be giving a presentation on the end stages of the flood, followed by an audience Q&A. As you know, we love to be interactive as can be with our audience. Then on Wednesday, we got Mike Ord back here with us. He's going to be then covering the post-flood ice age, okay, followed by an audience Q&A. Mike Ord's been here before. He's written a ton for CMI. He's written a lot of great books. He's definitely an expert on this topic. Then we've got Sal Jardina. All three of these men, brilliant, highly knowledgeable on these topics, okay? Sal's going to be giving us a presentation on the Thursday pertaining to how geology supports the global flood of Noah, followed again by an audience Q&A. So this is your chance, guys. Bring all of your questions. If you're a critic, bring your objections to the global flood or the post-flood ice age, for example, and we are going to do our best to cover everybody's questions. So also, I'm overwhelmed by how many people, overwhelmed by the amazing feedback of the Independent Origins handbooks, okay? The black and white version is available as well. It's got a variant cover of the colored edition, but I'm really happy with how the black and white cover looks. I think it looks really cool. So thanks for the support on these guys. I'm glad to see that a lot of people are picking them up. So anyways, that's it roughly, I think, for announcements that come to mind. I'm going to throw it over to Raw Matt for a second. Matt, I'm looking forward to this. We've been working hard on this stream. It's going to be a lot of fun. Did you want to introduce the topic, brother? You are on mute. Make sure you unmute yourself, but here we go.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one. This guy, SciManDan, decided to target us, which is actually quite fun. I'm glad. It takes us to another group of people who can challenge our model. Unfortunately for Dan, he actually doesn't know the model. So that was his biggest mistake. I think what happened is the guy thought this will be an easy target. And he made a mistake by just going on to YouTube and typing in truth. He said that he looks for channels called truth because he said he can find that there is no truth in their channel. So rather than go through our videos and actually watch them to see what we're talking about, he just grabbed one that offended him the most. It was called inbreeding. And he decided to make a critique on that. And therefore, we're wrong based on his belief system. So we are going to take that video and debunk every single thing that he says in it. And that's what we're doing today.
And I want to let the audience know, okay, this video is proof, okay, is evidence as to why your big dogs in the world of YouTube or the world of atheism and apologetics pertaining to atheism and evolution. This is why they are essentially terrified of debate and discussion, okay? You won't find them in open mics. You won't find them accepting debate challenges, okay? Because I would debate SciManDan anytime. I think it'd be a lot of fun. And I will say there is an exception. Conspiracy Cat's kind of one of the big dogs. I've debated him twice. First debate was almost 2.5 hours. Second debate was about 3 hours. That's 5 hours worth of debate with Conspiracy Cat. So, you know, if he's willing to do it, then some of these other big dogs, I guess you could say, we've taken on the likes of Viced Rhino, Aaron Raw, Professor Dave. Now we're taking on SciManDan. So you'll see the level of argumentation, the level of just flat out misrepresentation, okay, especially pertaining to our model. And I've saved a bunch of screenshots from comments from his own supporters on the YouTube video that we're debunking. And even they were pointing out the fact that SciManDan was misrepresenting my position, misrepresenting my argument. That's his own side. That's his own supporters. So we'll show that. I'll show evidence of that as well. So keep that in mind, okay? This is the type of video put out by these guys that demonstrates why they're not confident enough to debate it live. And remember, they got a lot more to lose. They got 500,000 subscribers. If they go into a live debate with an informed creationist and they get demolished, it's not going to look good. It's not going to look good for them in front of their audience. So they might lose the support. Also, logical, plausible, probable has got an after show, okay, following this. An after show and a 1,300 subscriber party plus calling out Pine Creek. So it's going to be a busy night over at Logical, Plausible, Probable as well. So anyways, why don't we get right into it? Matt, if you want to kick us off, I can screen share the video or screen share some of the comments we got first. How would you want to proceed, brother?
Oh, the comments are kind of fun, so we can leave that for a little bit later, because you know we get into the science and you know we can be serious, and let's break up the fun. Like sometimes just throw some in. I save some as well, so we might actually repeat a little bit. But if you want to start with a couple, let's do that, and then as it goes on, we'll pause and then do it again. It'll break up the monotony of the hard science for everybody.
Yes. Okay. Now, that being said, guys, be prepared because SciManDan does not present very much hard science, okay? So we will be presenting the hard science. SciManDan, not so much. Okay, so can you see my screen and is my audio coming through still?
Sounds good on my side.
Okay, so let's start it. Let's start it with some comments. So these are all screenshots. And if the audience wants to give us the A-OK on the audio video, I'll check from my phone. Okay. Trey says it shouldn't be lagging anymore. Might have just lagged while I was screen sharing. But let me know if it looks good now. Yeah, Matt, maybe check.
There's a little larger for people.
Okay. So these were all comments directly from SciManDan's video that he did of me, okay? And so let me see. Jamie Russell says leggings. I don't know if he's making a joke. Okay, audio good and everything good. Thanks, Raymond. So these are some comments right from his videos, okay? So for example, this one here. Where QWX Diamond says, while I'm not a biblical creationist and I support evolution as a theory, I personally think Dan was slightly misrepresenting SFT's argument, and it could be debunked in a more robust manner. So that's just a nice way of saying, Dan, you failed, okay? From his own supporter. Right here, this one's funny. Top Tier says, and there's tons of these comments, guys. I only picked a few. There's like 3,000 comments in there, so we could be here all day. But this guy says, why is it the SFT guy you are making fun of is posting links to studies in his video, and you are posting just random pictures? You got to outdo the guy you're ripping on, man. Come on, ha ha ha. So some constructive criticism for SciManDan, because I think even his supporters suspect, okay, that we are going to just absolutely destroy this video. This one says, if I were you, I would have taken more time and explained why his argument is bad. You just paused it, made a joke, and moved on. Clearly, we are all laughing at SFT, but we also not refuting the arguments he has by just laughing. So in other words, they're disappointed. There's one here I wanted to show you too. This right here. Once again, this video proves that SciManDan is a coward, although I do not agree with a lot of what that guy says, being me. He will basically debate anybody, very true. But SciManDan has to hide behind his video. Right here, this is the last one I'll show for now. We'll get some of your thoughts, Matt. He says, Perfect Unicorn says, I am on your side here, referring to SciManDan. So don't take this the wrong way, but dude, you got to do better on a rebuttal. And I can tell you, his supporters here are right. It's not good at all. You addressed nothing about what he said except for a rant that was clearly meant to be sarcastic. And you'll see what rant he's referring to. And here's just a ton more comments. Okay, so I don't want to go through them all, but you know, this guy says you didn't do a very good job on this, Dan. Remember, these are all his supporters. This isn't even the creationist side. In fairness, I think the guy is arguing about, so this guy's correcting Dan's straw man. That's why we're pointing out his straw man argument. So anyways, yeah, what are your thoughts, Matt? And take us away from here, brother.
I'm really trying to grasp it from the audience standpoint, right? They're watching him for what was it, Tinfoil Tuesday or something, and he's mocking. He's making a video to have fun, to make jokes and be condescending and have his audience have a good time. That's all it is. It's just a joke video, and he couldn't even get his own audience to appreciate what he made. So it's kind of ridiculous to me, don't you think? I mean, if you're going to go out of your way and let's just go, let's go make a spoof video out of SciManDan's video. It's going to actually have some comedy in it. If it's going to be serious, a serious debunking, then you be serious. If it's going to be a comedy, make it a comedy. Don't try to do both and fail at both. His own audience doesn't even know what to think of it. They're like, are you serious? This isn't a good rebuttal. If you're not serious, then why are you trying? Like, what's going on here? That's all.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So why don't we get into it then? I can screen share the video itself, and we will just kind of get right into it then.
Started.
I caught myself here because I want to screen share the. Let me screen share the audio as well. So share. Here we go, guys. Here we go. Praise I am says, how many Dans has SFT triggered and humiliated? Yes, in my long 33 years worth of life, quite a few. Probably the two most. Dodgeball Dan himself. I hope you guys congratulated Team Dodgeball for winning 2 awards. The Golden Dodgeball Award and the Tap Out Award. So a lot to be proud of. I think we're about to trigger SciManDan pretty good too. So let me share the audio and get this party started. So Matt, you just tell me when to stop if you have a comment you want to make. Go from there. Can you? I'm gonna let's try 1.5. If it's too fast, let me know. But this way we'll be able to get through it fast. Not do this all night. So here we go.
address an issue that I have pointed out on several.
Wow.
Load. And remind everybody, logical, plausible, probable is having an after show after this one. Okay. And
anti-evolution
here we
responses
go.
that I've done before. And that, of course, is the issue of inbreeding. You start with two people, then incest seems inevitable, does it not? Not so, according to... Away you go, good sir.
Independent origins moment number 4 and the biblical model of ancestry.
So, standing for truth has some reasoning when it comes to the ancestry of the human race in the...
Okay, guys, here we go. We've got another moment. Independent moment 4. And I'm excited for this one, okay? Previous moment, independent origins moment number 3, we discussed the low genetic diversity. The low genetic diversity that confirms what? Well, it confirms that we have all originated from just 2 people, Adam and Eve.
Now, of course, as a option, the genetic diversity is relatively low. But a study published in 2004 found 87% of the total modern human genetic diversity is accounted for by the individuals.
Just years ago. And as we know, I covered in that moment, the low genetic diversity is exactly. Matt, I think people were saying it was too fast. So let me.
Yeah. And also turn it down so it doesn't have to high quality. Turn it to like 240p instead of whatever it's at. To the quality. Hit hit that. And then turn it down. What's it on?
240p?
Yeah. Try 240. Right. Yeah. He doesn't post any studies or anything, so you don't need to see it crystal clear. That should help.
Right.
Yeah, that was pretty fast, man.
Here, I'm gonna shut off the webcam for the time being, just to save some bandwidth. And here we go. We should now.
What biblical creationists expected to find. The evolutionary community, because of the evidence, had no choice but to resort to a hypothetical, out of Africa population model.
The thing is, though, it's not hypothetical. The oldest fossils are found on the African continent. Additionally, the evidence and the fossils both point to Africa as our starting place as a species, independently.
In order to explain away
the
low genetic diversity found in human beings.
All right. I don't know if anybody could hear that, but we should probably reiterate what he said, because that was kind of glitchy. Basically, what he said is that.
I was gonna point out, Matt, if you wanted to, hey, did you want to share it from your end just to avoid any of that glitchiness?
Yeah, I'll share it.
I'll put the video in the side chat. We can reiterate what he's saying too. Let me see here, and put it in the private chat.
All right, I see it.
I heard an echo too when I went on the back play, but I think could have been coming through our mic. But from your end, then we should be fine. And then I can use my webcam. That's what we got our amazing audience for. To let us know how things.
I mean, do you think I should share now and replay it? Does the audience want to re-see it? It's pretty quick. I'll just do it anyway.
Yeah, do it. We want the best context as possible, so go ahead.
All right, 1 second.
Just thousands of years ago. And as we know, as we covered in that moment,
the low genetic diversity was exactly what biblical creationists expected to find. The evolutionary community, because of the evidence, had no choice but to resort to a hypothetical, out of Africa population bottleneck.
The thing is, though, it's not hypothetical. The oldest fossils are found on the African continent. Additionally, the DNA evidence and the fossil evidence both point to Africa as our starting place as a species, independently.
And fail! All right, here we go. Completely missed the entire point, everybody. What a surprise, I know. So check this out. What were we exactly saying? Well, we said that the hypothetical, right? So meaning they went over into Africa and they looked down and they said, oh, look, there's some old fossils here. These are in the deepest layers of rocks, or therefore we must come from Africa. But that came later. Matter of fact, that came so much later that when they did find the oldest fossils, they're in the wrong place. But we'll get to that. But first of all, it was genetic diversity that made this hypothesis into a theory. So look for yourself right here. You are going to see that this out of Africa hypothesis became a theory, meaning it had evidence now. After the fact, they noticed that Africans had more genetic diversity in them as a people group than any other people group. So because the hypothesis attributes diversity, being mutations, as more mutations, more diversity, more time, therefore the hypothesis is that the Africans are older. Basically, this is circular reasoning. So yes, it's true because they invented the theory based on circular reasoning from their own criteria. But if you investigate how they actually come to those numbers, it immediately is falsified. So it comes down to this. Basically, most mutation differences are in Africans. Therefore, it's true. And it's no longer a hypothesis. And yes, the oldest bones are found there. But look at where they actually are found on a map. You're going to find the oldest bones far away from where they actually predicted and placed the L node, right? So if you think like, oh, well, they placed the L node down in central to southern Africa, well, guess what? That would be a failed prediction, wouldn't? Because they're not there. What did they find? Well, they found a jawbone that looks like this. And what does that look like? Looks like a modern day human jawbone. And that's exactly what they admit it is. And they admit that there's no intermediary found anywhere. It's just all of a sudden a modern day human being found right there. Failed prediction out of where it should be. So there's that. And so, oh, go ahead.
No. I was saying, right. No, that's good. Good. Keep going, brother. Keep going.
Sure. So what do we see? Well, we see this. This is the genetic diversity, and it is higher in Africans. So therefore, to the evolutionists, they go see more mutations, and everybody has the same mutation rate. That is where they're wrong. See, evolutionists believe in something called neutral theory. That means that everything in all life mutates about the same rate of speed. So even though there's a fruit fly that has a short lifespan and many generations, it makes up for it by having a slower mutation rate that are because of those generations that equal out. They balance everything. But that is the problem with that theory, is neutral theory is now wrong. Matter of fact, neutral theory came out before recombination was even considered a thing, right? So if we're looking at even just recombination alone, we're going to find that that completely falsifies it. So I can show you right here. Sorry, I have to upload. I didn't upload every picture that I wanted, so I'm doing it now. So what would you think? Well, if Africans have more recombination rates, more genetic diversity, they're going to look older, even though they're genetically or biologically the same age as every other culture. And that is exactly what we find. So neutral theory is completely falsified by the fact that recombination rate changes the mutation rate in general. It's faster in Africans, so therefore they look older. So boom, neutral theory is already dead in the water. So that's what I wanted to convey the most. But here's still a matter. Basically, they can use their own criteria to place human origins anywhere that they want. So when they dig down and they find a bone somewhere else, and they can just move the origins of humanity anywhere they want. But that's circular reasoning. They can just go, well, we're going where the evidence is. Well, you can't make a prediction and then fail on that prediction and just move everything around and pretend like it's no big deal. These are multiple falsifications we're talking about. And right? I mean, if you're going to predict something and it's just a complete contradiction later.
Well, that's why they're not making predictions anymore either, especially in terms of genetics and the origins of humanity, because it's failed prediction after failed prediction. I'll say this one thing and then let you continue, brother, is the fact that SciManDan completely missed my point there as well, because what is hypothetical, what is post hoc ad hoc, is the fact that they had to invoke this hypothetical out of Africa population bottleneck in order to explain what? In order to explain the low genetic diversity found in humans today. That was never predicted. That was never predicted. They were shocked because according to the evolutionary model, think about this. You've been evolving for millions of years, accumulating mutations, okay? They look to mutations as the origin, okay, for genetic variation, genetic diversity. So a mutation by definition adds genetic diversity because it's adding something that was not previously there. So if you've got the Australopithecines evolving, okay, and then eventually you got Homo erectus living on the planet for 1 million or more years, I mean, you are accumulating a lot of genetic diversity. So therefore, today, humans should have high levels of genetic diversity. And yet what we find is low levels of genetic diversity in also the Y chromosome, the mitochondrial DNA, which makes sense because our starting point suggests that God created two people, Adam and Eve. So right off the bat, what does that do? Well, that restricts levels of genetic diversity. We didn't have to invent any hypothetical stories to explain the data. No, right off the bat, we expected low genetic diversity. And yet that's what we find. And it doesn't make sense according to the evolutionary model. Okay, they didn't predict this. When they found the data, they invented a story, okay, that suggests that human beings at some point went through a prolonged bottleneck in order to reduce levels of heterozygosity, increase levels of homozygosity. That was never predicted. SciManDan missed the point. And then with what you were saying, exactly, he's totally wrong. He's totally out of date when it comes to even the fossil record in terms of the out of Africa. So I just wanted to get that out before I forgot, but continue, brother. Continue.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, it's a good point. So Dan is looking at this from the standpoint of one side. He literally doesn't know our view. That's the problem he has trying to debunk something he doesn't understand. So it seems absolutely ridiculous to me personally. It would be like a boxer saying wrestling is trash. It's not even a real sport. And then I come along and go, well, what do you know about it? Well, nothing. Have you ever studied it or wrestled? Well, no. Can you name a single takedown in wrestling? Well, no. Can you? So you're admitting that you don't know anything about it, and but it's wrong. Like I don't understand. Like what's going on? Well, the consensus agrees with me that boxing's better, but you still don't know anything about it. So how can I take you seriously? You're just being biased to your own creation nonsense. That's what we're dealing with here, guys. He has no idea what he's arguing against because he admits it in his own thing. Like he doesn't even know what he's arguing against. And you'll see that soon because he's going to say multiple things that are wrong. That's why we're calling him SciManDan. But here's the most important thing to get out of this. What the evolutionists didn't predict this, exactly what SFT said. They looked and they saw the data and they were like, okay, well, we believe that mutations make differences and therefore that's what we see over here. So that's a retrodiction. We're going to go with that. And therefore, Africa out of Africa is now a theory. It's true. We got great evidence to back it up. But we win here because guess what? When we're looking around and we see maximum diversity, you can see over to the right-hand side of the chart, the maximum diversity falls on a sand individual that live in a southern African zone. And so what is their average diversity in people today? Well, we find that there's around, 38 to 40 mutations in the average human being, meaning Europeans usually have around that many differences separating us, right? Asians, Europeans. And guess what? When we look in to see what the average differences is, we fall right into that category based on young Earth creation and the mutation rate that we actually see. It's the observable mutation rate. The lowest you can get with the out of African theory is 170. Then the maximum diversity, looking back at the Sands individual again, the maximum diversity that we see in that one human being that has the most diversity out of anybody ever on Earth is 123. Guess what? Using the young Earth creationist time period based on the mutation rate that we see, you can land on 123 using ours. Using the evolutionary model, you don't come anywhere close. And guess what? That prediction is in print from Dr. Jensen here from 2015. And he also predicts right here the African people groups later and making a future prediction because this one has not been done yet. And if you look at his prior work, you can see that he predicted here the average diversity and the maximum diversity. So he nailed it right down the line and has it in print. So it's not looking too good. Not looking too good for Dan already. I mean, he doesn't know anything. He doesn't even know that that exists. So I guess it's got to learn the hard way.
Right. We've literally gone into what, a minute of his video, and already it's one big epic fail. I do have much more to say, but I think I'm going to save it for some of the other points he's about to bring up. So unless there's a couple more things you wanted to say to that, I think I'll save my next couple rebuttals for his next section there.
Okay, here we go. Share.
In order to explain away the low genetic diversity found in human beings. This is essentially storytelling. This is a rescue device.
Really? You want to call this storytelling? Okay, then.
And
finally, he gave some sarcasm there.
And it's an invention that was invoked, okay, simply to explain away the genetic related data. Okay, the genetic related data that doesn't support ape to man evolution, nor does it support universal common ancestry in general. Okay,
that's a bold-faced lie. It absolutely supports that. We have the genetic information for 9 different species of human. 9.
Whoa. Okay, my turn. What? Okay, so first of all, everybody, I'm sorry. Human speciated? That's what we're dealing with here? Humans have speciated? All right. Well, okay. Hold on. I'm going to upload something for this. This is just... Okay, you go ahead. I'm going to upload a picture for people because...
Well, I was going to say, he's about to get into... you could just see that he's totally missing the point, okay, as of now. And he's got no real explanation for the low genetic diversity that was... not predicted. Okay, so that's already what he's missed. He doesn't understand, and we're going to see that more. He doesn't understand the design diversity hypothesis that suggests that God would have front-loaded Adam and Eve and the created kinds with pre-existing functional DNA differences. Okay, God doesn't make mistakes, so there would not have been any genetic mistakes at creation. Okay, as we know, inbreeding reveals the hidden reservoir of mistakes. That's why these deleterious, these recessive mutations can come to the forefront. They can lead to genetic damage. So you're going to see how he totally misrepresents our model. Yeah, go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
All right. This is pretty clear. This has been obvious. This is how we know what a species is. It's one of the species concept that everybody agrees to. What is a new species? It's something that can no longer breed with other species that it's split from. Well, guess what? If he's claiming that humans are breeding with Neanderthal, then he is ignoring the exact thing that his theory says is true, which is species aren't supposed to breed. So he's saying that Neanderthal, Denisovan, Australopithecus, we all interbred, and therefore we're related. What? He just admitted we're a different species. So which one is it? Are we not a different species and we're breeding with species that we can't breed with because we're not a species? See the non-logical thing? I think even his own audience caught that. And there were a couple comments were like, wait, Dan, another species? What do you mean? What do you think?
Well, according to the biological species concept, yes, we know we have genes from Neanderthals. We know we interbred with them. Okay, therefore we are the same species. Okay, and the same thing goes with like the Denisovans. Okay, which we've now discovered. And none of this was predicted when supposedly humans left Africa. Okay, all of a sudden, what do they find? Homo neanderthalensis. They find the Denisovans, Heidelbergensis, right? They find, so-called hominid species like Floresiensis, which is the Hobbit, Naledi, Luzonensis. None of this was predicted. And if supposedly there was a first out of Africa event, okay, where Erectus left, okay, and there were independent origin events, evolutionary events outside of Africa, and you've got this massive genetic reshaping in Africa due to the population bottleneck that was prolonged and extended. Why, when humans left, Africa. Okay, modern day humans left Africa. Why were they able to interbreed with Neanderthals in the first place? You got massive genetic reshaping going on in Africa and outside of Africa, and yet they managed to interbreed, pass on their genes. We have their genetics today. None of this was predicted. This is why the evolutionary story consists of so many post hoc, ad hoc rationalizations, explanations. Okay, and I'm gonna share screen something real quick because it has to do with something he was saying earlier. Because he's just, I don't even know where to start, Matt, because he's so out of date. He's so out of date on the Out of Africa event. For example, there's a specific paper, okay, that I have here. I'm going to pull it up on the screen in a second. And what it implies that you can't actually pin the origin of humanity to a specific place or even a specific time. Okay, so SciManDan is just not up to date on the data. And I've got a ton of slides here. So let me find it first. Here we go. Okay. So, and this is a paper from 2021. And so it's as new as it gets. I'd love to see how we can address any of this. How does he address the low genetic diversity found in humans? If he wants to resort to the hypothetical population bottleneck, okay, well, then he has to admit that this was not predicted. This was post hoc, ad hoc to rescue the story. Then he has to explain how this extremely inbred population of 2 to 10,000 was able to spread into all parts of the world, seizing dominion over the planet. I mean, they would have had years and years of deleterious mutations coming to the forefront due to inbreeding, leading to rapid and accelerated genetic degeneration. Okay, that's not even feasible. We have an example today in the cheetahs. They're down to 7,000. Their sperm is degenerate. Conservationists are worried about them going extinct. Are we suddenly going to expect this population of 7,000 cheetahs to spread out into all parts of the world, seizing dominion over the planet? And apparently, those humans that left Africa that were highly inbred, genetically damaged, on the verge of extinction, they eventually invented things like cell phones, laptops, airplanes, invented the space shuttle, all from some massive near extinction event. So he has two problems. If he wants to resort to the hypothetical out of Africa population bottleneck, now he has to explain how that's even feasible, even remotely feasible. But he also has to admit that this was a rescue device, a retrodiction. They force-fitted it into their model because they never predicted the low genetic diversity. Because as I explained earlier, if you're evolving for millions of years, you're accumulating mutations. Mutations are adding more and more genetic diversity, which means humans should be highly diverse today. So here's a paper, Origins of Modern Human Ancestry, 2021. We argue that no specific point in time can currently be identified at which modern human ancestry was confined to a limited birthplace. I bet Dan's not familiar with this one. And that patterns of the first appearance of anatomical or behavioral traits that are used to define Homo sapiens are consistent with a range of evolutionary histories. Okay? Origins of modern ancestry. There's a quote here, okay, where he says, contrary to what many believe, SciManDan believes this. These are the evolutionists saying this, okay? Contrary to what many believe, neither the genetic or fossil record, okay, have so far revealed a defined time and place for the origin of our species. Incredibly damaging to his entire points. And actually, you touched on this too, and I'll just kind of make this a double whammy. How's my audio?
Sounds good.
Coming in. Okay. So you were touching on this too. Findings from Crete, Morocco, California, the latest Naledi age estimates. So here's a few that contradict what he's saying, just showing he's not up to date, right? This is why these guys would fail in a debate. A series of milestone papers were published in late 2017. This is as this book, talking about contestant bones, was going into press, okay? These findings confirm that the ape to man story is a theory in deepening crisis and simultaneously confirms these outlined in multiple chapters of this book. So one talks about anatomically modern human-looking footprints have been found in Crete that date to approximately 5.7 million years old. So this finding suggests humans significantly predate our reputed Australopithecine ancestors. So remember, there's also significant overlap, right? They're seeing now, Matt, between the Australopithecines, Paranthropines, okay, your Homo genus, all significant overlap. And it also talks about these findings are remarkably consistent with our alternative model, talking about the biblical model. Homo sapien fossils from Morocco were assigned a revised age of 315,000 years old. These bones are not found where they should be, according to their model, is the point. The Homo sapiens collection from Morocco predates what was previously seen as the oldest known occurrence of Homo sapiens, okay? Dated about 195,000 years ago. This greatly extends the coexistence of Homo sapiens and their reputed archaic forebears / contemporaries, including Neanderthals, Denisovans, Erectus, Naledi, Floresiensis, okay? This greatly confounds any claims of an evolutionary progression within the genus Homo. It's a big bushy mess. The genetic data is not consistent with their out of Africa event or even just ape to man evolution. Okay, right off the bat, he misrepresents me because I'm pointing out the fact that if God truly did create Adam and Eve, we should expect low genetic diversity. God's creating two people, automatically restricts genetic diversity. Turns out that's exactly what we find. It's the evolutionists that were shocked. The evolutionists didn't predict this. The evolutionists invented a story to account for the data, but the story that they invent is not even feasible because a prolonged event such as that with prolonged inbreeding would have led to a population of 2 to 10,000 that was highly, highly degenerate. So I'm done with that rant. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
No, it was good. I just wanted to reply to two things real quick. I saw that pop up. Did you two get bullied in school for your beliefs? That would be really hard because we were atheist evolutionists. So no, we had no idea what young Earth creation even was. So no bullying being done because we were just like everybody else. And another comment: should I unsub from SciManDan's channel? No, he talks about all kinds of stuff. He does comedy. He teaches all kinds of things. It's a totally different channel than ours. And besides, don't you want to learn both sides of the argument? We don't want anybody unscribed. Learn their side, learn our side.
It's what I always say. Like, for example, Gutsa Gibbon's terrified of her viewers to watch our videos because they will see how badly we destroy Team Dodgeball, Gutsa Gibbon. But then we come along. I say, watch their videos, watch our videos, come to your own conclusion because it's clear who's the one who's dodging. That's why we say Team Dodgeball. She'll say things like, oh, I watch Standing for Truth videos, so you guys don't have to. Yeah, you don't want them to watch our videos because they'll see clearly how much, she's dodging, so on and so forth. So yeah, don't unsub to SciManDan. Watch his videos, watch both sides, and then watch how we demolish his videos. With, as you can see, we've been going 45 minutes. We've gone over paper after paper from the evolutionist side. We're talking about predictions coming out of the creationist side, predictions on mutation rates in Africa, things that the evolutionary community is not doing. Okay, I'll ask SciManDan, what predictions can you make? How do you explain the low genetic diversity in humans? How do you explain the fact that all Y chromosomes on this planet are nearly identical? And they go back to a one Y chromosomal ancestor just a few thousand years ago, so the Y chromosome mutates fast. Same thing with the mitochondrial DNA. How do you explain all this? I'd love to see an answer to all of these lines of evidence that suggest independent origins and refute universal common ancestry. So, yeah, go ahead, Matt. Go ahead.
Oh no, you did good. I think we should move on because we're not a lot all the way in. So I'm going to share screen again, and we'll jump right back into this. This is just great. I mean, poor guy stands nothing, no chance. Oh. Okay, here we go.
Let me just do these super chats real quick.
Sure.
before I forget. Logical, plausible, probable, $5 super chat. I appreciate the support, brother. Says, for the atheists who are unsubscribing to drop me below 1,300. Oh, what do you know? More triggered atheists. Not surprised there. I took screenshots in anticipation. You guys are so predictable. After show is on. Awesome. I'm excited. I'm excited. So, and Raymond, $5 super sticker. Thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you, everybody, for the support. And I believe there's one up here from Jeremy. Thank you. We got to the Mitchell one earlier. Logical, plausible, probable. Again, $2 super chat. I appreciate it. After show on John's channel. So that being said, the floor is yours, Matt. Take it away, brother.
As we know, according to their post hoc ad hoc story, it would have been highly damaging since it consisted of not just a one generation bottleneck followed by rapid and exponential population growth like us, like our model, okay? It consisted of an extended bottleneck, a prolonged bottleneck in order to reduce levels of genetic diversity.
Not at all. Homo sapiens interbred with other species of humans. In fact, research of the mitochondrial DNA of specimens from Germany found that Homo sapiens were mating with Neanderthals around 220,000 years ago. There is also evidence to suggest that Homo sapiens mated with other archaic human species as well.
All right. It's about to get a whole lot worse. Dan, I'm sorry. Here we go. Where to begin on this one? Okay, so he's talking about the assumption, yes, assumption that the 200,000-year-old bottleneck actually exists, which I might just throw in real quick, that they admit that there is no bottleneck, even in their own geologic column, as you can see. There is no trace right here in the geological record of any global bottleneck 200,000 years ago, but yet there is evidence inside the genetics of every living thing on Earth, from DNA barcoding done by Fowler in 2018, that everything has gone through this genetic bottleneck, including aquatic life. So I'm sorry, there was a genetic bottleneck. It was worldwide. Everything has low genetic diversity. Where does this 200,000 year date come from? Easy to explain. You can even go to Wikipedia, the one thing that they love to go to the most for their information. Matter of fact, that's what I think he's doing right now. He's like, whoa, let's see how old humanity is. 200,000 years ago sounds good enough to me. Where'd he go for this? Right here. Estimates of the human mitochondrial mtDNA vary greatly depending on the available data, and it comes from extrapolation. They assume it is true based on one method. Now, there's two methods. We use the pedigree method, which you can see at the top. It is the observable rate. It is the empirical rate. It is what we see when we look inside of human beings. The phylogeny-based one is an assumption. It is a guess, and it is their best guess. And they think that that holds precedent over the observable rate. Why? Because of their bias. They need evolution to be true, so they invent their own method. And this is how it's done. You can see it at the top. They assume a split happened between human and primate, and they calibrate it based on fossil assumption, which, again, they admitted right down here that there was no geological evidence. So they're basing it on the assumption that humans split, and they are basing their molecular clock on that assumption. So when we look at the observable rates, guess what? They're around 10 times faster. Why are they faster? Because the other ones are not true. It's obvious. And when we look at the observable rates, look at the substitution rate, not just mutation rate, but what really matters, the substitution rate, because that's a population. It affects the population, not just an individual. And look at them. We shouldn't be able to find this many unless humanity was young, right? I mean, think about it. The mutation rate is clicking so fast, yet there's only a maximum substitution differences in all humans, about 24. But yet when we look at the fast substitution rate, we can account for why there's so few substitutions in humans. Evolution can't do that because theirs doesn't work. And they admit this right here, actual versus observable rates. Then they admit that it's faster than we even see. So if we have evidence to prove our model over theirs, like I said, all these things prove us, and then they say that it's even faster than we give it credit for, then their assumption is dead in the water. All this nonsense that they came up with is nothing but literal nonsense. Oh, and real quick, even his own people said, what? Homo sapiens speciated?
Right. I saw that.
Yeah, people are like, what are you talking about? Humans don't speciate. They've never speciated.
I'd like to see him explain, like I said earlier, if there is this massive genetic reshaping going on out of Africa, in Africa, when humans left, they were able to interbreed with Neanderthals. How did they produce fertile offspring? They both should have been so genetically different, structurally different. Okay. They never predicted any of this. And this is apart from my book, Special Creation. Okay. And I point out how the fossil record, when it comes to their, it's not even a theory. It's not even a good story. It's not even an interesting story. Okay. I'd love to see SciManDan answer this. I haven't seen any good answer to this. Okay. The fossil record is so flimsy. There's no evidence for their so-called ape to man story and their out of Africa story. Okay. So I write here, let's see. As a matter of fact, when we look at humans in the fossil record, we see no evidence of hundreds of thousands of years of human existence, right? Like you're pointing out, they assumed the bottleneck. They assumed the hundreds of thousands of years. They assumed the deep time, which there's no record in the geological column for. Okay, so I point out, I want to hear him answer this. I doubt he will. But so given the evolutionary model, we can assume that there were about 1 million Homo erectus living across Eurasia, Africa, essentially handling a massive distribution. Now, let us say their average generation time is 20 years. That means about every 20 years, you have another 1 million dead bodies, right? And so after 1 million years, now what we're doing is we're going according to their model, right, Matt? So after 1 million years, we have over 20 billion dead people. If there are evolutionists in the chat, I'd love to hear an answer to this. This is 20 billion people of which we have no evidence ever existed. Just disappeared. Okay. Even to the proponents of evolution, even SciManDan would agree that Erectus would have had primitive technology. Okay. They would have had campsites, villages, fire. There would have been a ton of evidence for their existence. Okay. Whether we look at genetics or whether we look at the fossil record, we do not find evidence for the human evolutionary story. So the point is, every single fossil of Homo erectus that we have can fit in the back of a trunk. And yet there should have been evidence for 20 billion Homo erectus, okay, given the evolutionary story, okay? What you find in the record, you either find fully human, okay, bones that are fully human. You find degenerate humans, okay, like, for example, Floresiensis, like the hobbits, Erectus, okay, Luzonensis. Neanderthals in their final stages were highly inbred, highly degenerate. You find true apes and degenerate apes. We don't find anything in the middle. Now, you could point to habilis or setiba, but we know that there's also strong evidence for what's called artificial species, where you've got mixed bones, okay, in these mixed bone beds. So there's no evidence for this story, no evidence in the fossils, no evidence in the genetics, okay? In the Independent Origins Handbook, I got a section with your Y chromosome phylogenetic tree, as you were talking about, Matt. You know what? I'll just share a screen on this real quick for the visual. So here's another question for SciManDan. Now, Godzilla Freak pointed out something earlier, how SciManDan will say something like, oh, this is too long, right? Which is just an excuse. It's what Vice Rhino said. Oh, too long. Okay, well, here's your choice then to someone like Vice Rhino, SciManDan. If you don't have time to go through the video because truly we just know you can't address it or answer the questions, let's just do a debate. There you go, hour and a half, 2 hours, discuss these issues in a respectful, cordial fashion. Then you don't got to respond to, a 2-hour video, but it's just all excuses. That's the point. So as you can see here, a mitochondrial DNA phylogenetic tree, reflection of DNA differences. Same thing with the Y chromosome data, okay? So here's the thing, though. You'll automatically notice this starburst pattern, okay? Explosion from a center point. Exactly what we would expect and predict based on the biblical creation model, right? An explosion from Noah, essentially, okay? This, the Y chromosome phylogenetic tree and the mitochondrial DNA phylogenetic tree, okay? You'll notice that this is not a reflection of a lot of mutations, hundreds of thousands of years worth of mutations. This is just a few mutations, okay? In general, on average, there's about 20 differences that separate any two people in the mitochondrial DNA specifically, okay? And max, there's about 100 to 120 or 130 in Africans, okay? Extremely low genetic variation is extremely easy to account for in biblical time frame, extremely difficult to account for in evolutionary time frames. And you'll notice the different lengths of the branches, okay? This goes for both trees. The different lengths of the branches, you'll see that people, okay, are picking up more mutations than the same amount of time, more mutations than their cousins, okay? It goes back to a common ancestor. That breaks the molecular clock, where the evolutionists want to assume, okay, humans and chimps split, let's say 6 to 8 million years ago. They're separated by this amount of DNA differences, which gives us this slow molecular clock, way more slow than what we observed, Matt. You were pointing out Y chromosome, mitochondrial DNA, mutation rates are extremely fast, way faster than evolutionists ever predicted. So you got Y chromosome mutates extremely fast. You only got a few differences separating any two people in the Y chromosome. Mitochondrial DNA mutates extremely fast. You only got a few differences separating any two people on the globe. Okay, easily accounted for coming from, common ancestors within a few thousand years, according to the biblical-based model. And the pattern in general fits exactly what we'd expect. Explosion from a center point, what's called the starburst pattern. Oh, this is an unrooted tree, they'll say. Yeah, that gives us the most natural reading of the data, because guess what? The lengths of the branches destroys the assumptions behind the evolutionary molecular clock. You can't make assumptions then. Okay, but we know it's fast. We know there's few differences separating any two people. This is where people like Dr. Dan Stern Cardinal fail miserably, because for one, they can't make predictions. The best they can come up with is retrodictions, nothing that's future intestable. It's all storytelling in order to fit the data. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out, and I'd love to see, because we're showing phylogenetic trees. We're showing reflections of the diversity on the globe. We are showing paper after paper, empirical evidence, okay? And SciManDan's just making sarcastic jokes, 2-second responses, not demonstrating that he even knows anything about this topic. So I want to see answers to this empirical evidence, okay? These phylogenetic trees don't lie. Okay, this is from the 1,000 Genomes Project. It's a mitochondrial phylogeny. Explain to us, why does the pattern fit the biblical model? Why is there so few DNA differences? Okay, the mutation rate is very fast. Because there's only a few differences and the mutation rate is fast, okay, we can also account for plenty of purifying selection, which people like Dr. Dan say we ignore. No, we account for genetic drift, purifying selection. Okay, we account for these important factors, and it fits perfectly in line with the biblical-based model. So SciManDan, how do you deal with this data? You know, what can you provide us empirically? Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I think he's just going to do what the typical people do and be like, well, it matches the fossil record. But if that's what they resort to, right? Look, for decades, they've been using the fossil calibration to do these phylogenetic trees. But guess what? They go, well, it's really difficult to reconcile with the fossil record because it doesn't match. And then guess what? When they do look at the different models, they go, well, pedigree studies, which is what we look to for mutation rates, they're more reliable than phylogenetics. Why? Because it's reality. That's why. And they admit that it's biased. Look, it's rather the phylogenetic rate that estimates that are biased. Why? Because they know it doesn't match the reality of things. So they admit that it's wrong. They admit that it's biased. And they say it in these studies. It's not like some of them are trying to hide it. They're just like, it doesn't match. That's the reality. So Dan's going to go to the fossil record, and he's just going to do what everybody else does and fail. And look, many studies continue to rely on the phylogenetic analysis of mtDNA, the control region, which is the D loop, and these haplogroup trees, right? Because they need to. That's kind of what they've done. And, well, how about selection? They go, well, selection is unlikely to be a major factor that underlies the differences between these things, because they love to invoke selection. Well, maybe it's removing these mutations, and that's why they're so fast. You hear that all the time, right? Well, selection, it can remove these things, and then we don't see them. So you realize that by invoking selection, you're speeding the rate up, right? I don't think they even grasp that. But then look at this one. In this present study, we expanded our previous analysis of the control region divergence in the multi-generational pedigree study. that the results of our analysis, as well as those from other studies, indicates that there is a difference between these two rates, meaning the difference between phylogeny, and which is evolutionary, and the pedigree, which is ours. And guess what? There has been a battle, and the evolutionists wanted to debate and say, well, our fossil record one is stronger. And guess what? It was the pedigree study was defended by Howell and Holland, Parsons, and Howell, and defended easily. It says right on the bottom. They were attacked, and they defended their work. And then phylogenetic-based assumptions may be biased downwards if the substitutions are not fully neutral, and we know they are not. So we will go on, but I just wanted to show you he's going to just do what everybody else is and be like, well, phylogeny is true because we have the fossil record, and they admit that the fossil record doesn't match the mutations, doesn't match the pedigree rates. Nothing matches because they have the false narrative. They're building backwards. They see evidence and they go, well, it has to match our model. And it doesn't. So let's just use this. We'll just invent our own thing and we'll go with phylogeny because evolution must be true. It's the paradigm driving the conclusion. That's all it is. It's biased assumption. And well, we'll move on unless you want to close it up. You're muted. You're muted.
My bad, brother. I was saying, no, I mean, as you, I can go forever, but I'm just biting my tongue. Like, you know, we'll let him dig his hole a little bit deeper, and then I'll continue making some comments. So,
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, brother.
All right, here we go. Share screen.
That they did not predict, by the way. This is why it is exactly a post hoc ad hoc rescue device. It was essentially a near extinction event, an event that was connected with severe inbreeding. And we know genetically, we know what inbreeding does. We know what the effects are.
Indeed, we do. But Homo sapiens did not do that. Interbreeding.
What does he mean humans didn't inbreed?
You know, it doesn't sound like he understands his own model.
Yeah.
As breeding with closely related people over generations. There weren't one or two families of Homo sapiens to start with. And as indicated earlier, Homo sapiens bred with other human species as well. Here is my personal DNA profile image. Look, I am 99.9% European. No surprise there. But crucially, I have around 2% Neanderthal genes in my genome. Why is that? Because my ancestors mated with them.
Because
Right. Do you want to take it away on that one? Man. We covered this already. He thinks they're a different species, clearly.
Right. Let me I'm going to address the bigger picture with what he's saying too. And I may cover a few things that he's going to say as well after this, but it's important to address what he's saying, okay? Because maybe they were never down to two people, obviously, okay? Like in our model, we got Adam and Eve, the flood bottleneck, we got 8 people, okay? But they do have the extended bottleneck at some point to reduce levels of heterozygosity to explain the low levels of genetic diversity today. And they need a prolonged bottleneck for that, whenever that is, right? I've seen bottlenecks invoked 200,000 years ago. I've seen them invoked 70,000 years ago. Okay. In my first debate with Erica, she had no answer to this. She's fumbling all over herself. She said, well, there's that Toba extinction event that was a bottleneck. Now in her video, she's saying, no, there was no Toba extinction event, you know, that's not supported by the science. It's like, well, that was the rescue device you were using in our first debate. So they can't agree with each other on when these bottlenecks were because there's no evidence for them. It's all post hoc ad hoc. That's the point. Talk to 10 different evolutionists, you get 10 different bottlenecks. Okay, some say 200,000 years ago, some say bottleneck during the Erectus into kind of modern Homo sapiens stage. But okay, I'm gonna point this out. Now, if all of humans came from Adam and Eve, let's say our model just thousands of years ago. Okay, let's start there. How could we have survived such a profound bottleneck? This is what the evolutionists will say. This is what you'll find all throughout the comment section of SciManDan's video. This is what SciManDan himself is implying, okay? How could we have survived such a profound bottleneck? You heard him say that there. We never started from 2, scoffing at the biblical model, okay? Well, they will then say, wouldn't humans have gone extinct due to inbreeding, okay? Because you've got marrying and interbreeding with close relatives, okay? People are marrying their brothers and their sisters, their cousins. They'll say, wouldn't this drive us to extinction? Because we know today, when we look to today, Matt, marrying close relatives is bad. Well, why is it bad? They never want to get into this. SciManDan doesn't seem to understand. Inbreeding manifests the hidden reservoir of genetic mistakes, like I said earlier, okay? These genetic mistakes that have been accumulating are now manifested, okay? So, therefore, these recessive deleterious mutations, they can come to the forefront, leading to disease. Okay, let's go back to our biblical bottleneck at creation. Okay, so we start with Adam and Eve, right, Matt? They were specially created. Okay, front-loaded with created nuclear heterozygosity. SciManDan wants to say, oh, this is post hoc. This is magic. Oh, really? Because it's funny how it leads to accurate testable predictions on DNA function, speciation rates, mutation rates, okay? We would predict the vast majority of DNA differences, DNA elements are functional and essential, and that's exactly what we're finding. Okay, for example, these orphan genes, these taxonomically restricted genes. I debated conspiracy cats, which I believe these guys are buddies, and I asked them in both debates, I said, how can you evolve something like an orphan gene, okay, these taxonomically restricted and essential genes? You would need 5 or 6 mutations that are beneficial, okay, to begin with. And we've never observed this, so what we see in terms of function and the essential functionality of the genome, the activity of the genome supports this front-loaded diversity model, plus the speciation events we see, right, Matt? We see, for example, new bird species in real time speciating through shifts in heterozygosity to homozygosity, just like we would predict. Adam and Eve and the biblical kinds at creation would have had the most heterozygosity. And over time, you'd have shifts from heterozygosity to homozygosity. We'd have less heterozygosity today. Okay, and we're seeing in real-time speciation events, this is exactly how animals are adapting and speciating, okay? So we've got Adam and Eve, specially created. This is then followed by what? Rapid and exponential population growth. This is what is called a one-generation bottleneck versus their population bottlenecks, which are prolonged bottlenecks, not followed up by rapid and exponential growth, okay? Now remember, Adam and Eve were created de novo. This is completely different, Matt, right? As you know, this is completely different than the evolutionary bottleneck. This is why SciManDan has devolved into StrawManDan and misrepresents us, because as he has been, and you'll see throughout the video, he is arguing against evolutionary creation. An evolutionary bottleneck starts with a population that already has, right, Matt? Already has a history of picking up mutations. Matt, would Adam and Eve being specially created, front-loaded with nuclear heterozygosity, would they have a history before that?
You would look at them and you, right? You would say that.
If scientists came about and did some genetic sequencing, and they saw these DNA differences, even though they were just created an hour before, they would conclude there's a history. No, there would be no history. Adam and Eve would have been created without mutations. They would not have had a previous history where they picked up bad mutations over time, okay? Today, the nuclear mutation rate's roughly 100 new mutations per person per generation, right? So take this point of mutation accumulation back to a point of no mutation accumulation. That's a point of perfect genomes, a point of Adam and Eve. There'd be no mutations, okay? But the evolutionary model suggests no. Whatever population went into the bottleneck, Matt, that population would still have a history before it where they have picked up mutations over time. That's why the bottlenecks are bad in the evolutionary model, because now those bad mutations that have been picked up over time are going to be manifested, leading to genetic damage, leading to disease. That's why the biblical bottleneck with Adam and Eve is nothing like the evolutionary bottlenecks, where they have years and years of inbreeding, where more and more deleterious mutations are coming to the forefront, leading to genetic damage. That's why their hypothetical out of Africa population bottleneck is not even feasible. Okay, it's prolonged. They need it to be prolonged. Speed of Sound, who is no answers in atheism, always asks, what do you mean by a prolonged bottleneck? Why does it have to be a prolonged bottleneck? Well, one generation isn't going to reduce all of the necessary amount of genetic diversity. They need a prolonged bottleneck. We have really low genetic diversity today. Okay, so this is the last thing I'll say. The biblical bottlenecks, Adam and Eve, and the bottleneck at the flood are one generation. You have Adam and Eve having many kids, and their kids having many kids, and so on. And this also goes for Noah's family. Okay, and I could get it. You know, I'll save this for later. I'll get into the DNA markers and different types of genetic diversity today, found today in a little bit, and how that confirms independent origins. But it's this simple. Okay. It's this simple for people who support SciManDan. I'm going to make this really simple. According to the biblical creation model, inbreeding would have been a non-issue, okay? Since there would have been no deleterious mutations. That's it. Okay? There's no deleterious mutations to come to the forefront that can lead to genetic damage. He completely misunderstood my point. Yes, for a couple generations, there's going to be inbreeding. That's fine. Do they think this world and the history of this planet is all puppies and rainbows? It was necessary. Who did that first single-celled organism marry? You know, that's a little tongue-in-cheek. But seriously, even they believe in periods of inbreeding. It is what it is. It's reality. Get over it. You know, quit using these weak arguments. Mutations are essentially typographical errors in a text. Copying errors. There would have not been any copying errors at creation. So there's no copying errors that can come to the forefront due to inbreeding and lead to genetic damage. It's that simple. If he can't get that, then maybe he just needs to retire. Okay. Go ahead. That was a rant, but I think it was important. Go ahead.
No. How about this? I made it easy for everybody. You tell everybody we've sequenced Eve's genome. We know what it is. Right. And so what we've done is taken these studies and put them into one place for people to go and see, you know, those common questions like, where did Cain find his wife? What is Eve's sequence? Like, what's going on with genetic diversity? Patriarchal drive. These things are put into one article that you can find on Creationist Clothing right here. So you can see we have the evidence that Eve existed and we know what her genome was. Because like he's saying, if we know how many mutations have been building up, and we know we can look and there haven't been that many, and they happened over a short period of time, and you rewind to a point of genetic perfection where there was no mutation going back in time, well, that was Eve. Real simple, right? There is the data. For those of you that want the math and the numbers, it's right there.
Right there. It's that simple. It's that simple. I think were you gonna say something about the Neanderthal or?
Oh no, that's coming up.
Okay.
As these mutations, okay, they come to the forefront and they lead to rapid and accelerated genetic degeneration. They're manifested essentially because of inbreeding.
And there is a lot of evidence to suggest that other than Homo sapiens breeding with them, interbreeding is what finally killed the Neanderthals off.
Hey, can you believe that? I got something right.
Yeah.
It's not a good thing, and this is why this fairy tale that the evolutionary community invokes is not even somewhat reasonable. And this is why those who hold to evolutionary theory and ape to man evolution, okay, this is why they have an unsolvable problem.
Do we? Really?
And this is the issue.
Matt, pause it just for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to point out the obvious, okay? He just glazes over the Neanderthals. The fact that genetic evidence, okay, tells us that Neanderthals interbred with the direct ancestors of modern people. Like we were saying earlier, if we look to the biological species concept, then we are by definition the same species.
Yes.
And it even appears that people outside of Africa, right, as we've pointed to, he showed his genetic results too, carry 3 to 4% Neanderthal DNA. That is not something they predicted. Okay. And we can get into a whole bunch of things that we have. I would just tell people to go watch our video from a few weeks ago on Neanderthals, where we discussed just how highly intelligent and sophisticated they were, right? They had purposeful navigation. They buried their dead. They made boats, right? Which is evidence of purposeful navigation. They were into cosmetics, had music. List goes on and on. Okay, so I recommend people go look at that. This was never predicted. This was never predicted by the evolutionists. Okay, 100 years ago, they asserted Neanderthals were some half ape, half man, brutish type of creature. You know, the exact opposite today. So I like how he just bypasses that for his ignorant audience, for the most part, who don't know the history of failed prediction after failed prediction when it comes to the evolutionary model. Okay, they didn't predict this about the Neanderthals, and now we have the genetic data that suggests that we, at least with people outside of Africa, carry 3 to 4% of Neanderthal DNA. We're the same species. Get over it. And the Tower of Babel event and the dispersal of all these people groups best explains why a lot of these subgroups of people went extinct. They're all humans, but they became highly degenerate because they became isolated. Some of these people groups got isolated on islands, where you've now got island dwarfism. Okay, like the hobbits, Naledi, Luzonensis. None of this is evidence for large-scale human evolution. It's evidence for the biblical model. Yeah, go ahead, Matt. Go ahead.
Nothing. I just wanted to share the screen with you with what we actually, what they predicted and what they saw Neanderthal as, and then what we know today, just normal human beings. So it's pretty funny, backpedaling and the falsification that they've actually had over the time. Because by any criteria, multiple falsifications is a falsification. It means you're wrong. And of course, evolution can't die. So they just have to revise it and backpedal and hope that everybody forgets the past, because their model's dead. Pretty simple. But let's move on. Here we go.
All DNA differences, all DNA diversity as a result of what? As a result of mutations, as a result of genetic mistakes over time, essentially. As we know, and as we covered in Independent Origins moment number 1, we talked about the design diversity hypothesis. That we start with the assumption that God would have front-loaded Adam and Eve, which applies universally across the biblical kinds. God would have front-loaded them with created nuclear heterozygosity. Because when God said to be fruitful and multiply, did God mean for this to be carried out through cloning? Of course not. Of course not. God did not say to be fruitful and clone yourselves. He said be fruitful and multiply. So this is why the starting point of design diversity makes sense both theologically and scientifically, okay?
Okay. The reason I love using StreamYard, well, that's easy.
That's okay. It is pretty funny.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that he lets me go on and on for a while, right? And then his little 3-second responses are just hilarious because they're not addressing anything. And I just find it so funny, which is how we started off this video. His own viewers, his own, at least the ones that are objective or understand the topic, realize and pointed out, Dan, you're misrepresenting him. Dan, this isn't a good rebuttal. Dan, you should try harder next time. from his own supporters. So yeah, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I know. And they don't even like creationists. They hate us. And they're defending us. It's funny.
Right.
2 people. And you want to say that Homo sapiens had an interbreeding problem. Right.
Now, here's...
Pause it real quick.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to re-say everything that I just did, so just 2 seconds. Once again, misunderstands what I just said when it comes to design diversity, when it comes to inbreeding and why inbreeding is bad, because these genetic mistakes are coming to the forefront. If there are no genetic mistakes to come to the forefront to lead to disease and genetic damage, then there's not going to be a problem. So there can be inbreeding, but there doesn't necessarily have to be the negative effects or consequences of inbreeding. But for the evolutionary model, since they explain all DNA differences as mutations over time, then yes, it is bad for them. And SciManDan needs to quit arguing against evolutionary creation. We don't explain the majority of DNA differences as a result of mutations like they do. They explain, okay, ultimately the source for all genetic variation as mutation. So when they have bottlenecks and they invoke bottlenecks, then guess what? You are going to have some really, really bad consequences because of the inbreeding, especially when your bottlenecks are prolonged. Okay? So, yeah, go ahead, brother. Continue.
Here's what I find funny, guys. The fact that the critic will very frequently, and I've had almost 100 debates, and I have discussed and debated the critic on this argument more times than I could count. Essentially, if I had $1 for every time this argument was utilized by the critic, I'd be probably a trillionaire, to be honest with you.
Oh, not this
trillionaire.
He goes on here for over out of everything we've talked about. This is what he wants to focus on. I'll play it.
Yeah, just play it. Yeah, just play it, because even his own audience realized, okay, he's ignoring all the science. He's ignoring all the papers. Okay, that's why this has been so fun. We're just demolishing him with empirical facts, scientific papers. Ignores everything. Really just makes us look good. And then focuses on a clear exaggeration. SciManDan. I told you 1 billion times not to exaggerate. He's going to take that, what I just said, as something serious.
Yeah.
So yeah, play it just for a laugh. This is funny. This is what he spends the most time on. Go ahead.
All right.
So 1 trillion times in 100 debates, which is 10 billion times per debate. Right. Let's say that argument given took 10 seconds to give. That would mean each of your debates lasted
Keep going.
3,170 years. And you've had 100 debates, which means you've been going at this for at least 317,000 years. How old does the Bible say the earth is again?
It's based on a straw man and a misrepresentation of our starting point and our model. Okay. The argument has to do with inbreeding. They'll say we have an inbreeding problem according to the biblical base model of ancestry and independent origins. Okay.
Well, I don't understand how it's not a problem.
No kidding.
There were originally two people.
Yeah, no kidding. So now, at least if he watches this video, Matt, okay, I spent 10 minutes there explaining why it's not a problem in more detail. If he continues to use this argument or continues to say, I don't understand why this is not a problem, then he's either just pretending to not understand, or he doesn't understand, which means he probably shouldn't call himself SciManDan, because he's not understanding the basic science as to why inbreeding is even bad in the first place. Okay? Exactly. So there's nothing worse than arguing with somebody you disagree with, okay, by misrepresenting their position. So when he argues against us by arguing against evolutionary creation with that assumption that the ultimate source for genetic variation is mutations, then he's going to fail every time, like he's failing here. Go ahead, Matt.
It's a problem. There were originally two people, according to the Bible, a man and a woman. When they have children, then it just doesn't work.
What? Crazy. He doesn't know. He doesn't.
Hey, Matt, let me say that.
It's
yeah.
Go ahead.
You know what? I'm going to spend it. Yeah, if you want to stop the shares. I know you're going to want to say a couple things too. So, let me. I'm gonna share a screen on a couple of pictures here, but I want to point out how easy it is to account for all your ethno-linguistic, let's say, differences. There's no races. There's one race, the human race. Okay, the Human Genome Project has demonstrated that. We got different variants. Okay, so if you accurately represent the creation model, the design diversity hypothesis, okay, then you understand this whole concept that goes back to basic genetic principles. SciManDan's calling himself SciManDan, so he should be able to understand what it means when you look to, let's look to alleles, for example. You can look to, capital and lowercase letters, right? Big A, big B, little b. That would mean you're genetically heterozygous, okay? And these letters, okay, to the audience, what these letters, I'm going to break this down. What is created heterozygosity indicate? Well, these letters, okay, constitute different features and different traits, Okay, so for example, when it comes to Adam and Eve, which he gives no reason why it's not possible, he just flat out says it's not possible. Okay, it's too funny. Well, with Adam and Eve, assuming front-loaded genetic diversity, okay, if you have capital A for, say, dark skin and a lowercase a for light skin, and then you have a couple, okay, who's created genetically heterozygous like Adam and Eve, well, if Adam and Eve are a mix of capital and lowercase letters, right? Capital A, lowercase a, capital B, lowercase b, okay? Not only that, you would apply this to all the millions of DNA positions in the genome. That's a lot of diversity built in to the first couple, okay? That means they would essentially be a middle brown skin tone, and they would, as a result, have the potential to produce every shade of skin that exists on the planet. They would have in their DNA, okay, if they were created genetically heterozygous, capital A, lowercase a, capital B, lowercase b, they'd have the genetic potential to produce every shade of skin that exists on the planet today or known to man. This is not that difficult. And let me go find, I got a couple slides to show this. I'm going to share screen and then yield to you for a bit, brother. But this is important. This is important. This is a science lesson for SciManDan. These are teaching moments. So right here, we have couples today, okay? For example, here's the names. They both have black fathers and white mothers. As a result, the couple conceived the extremely rare combination of black and white twins. And here's an example of your alleles, okay? Middle brown, capital A, lowercase a, capital B, lowercase b. And you'd have the potential to produce every single shade of skin just from starting from there. Remember, we have within ourselves about 3 million positions that are different. We are heterozygous. Okay, and SciManDan obviously doesn't get this. So what this means for the audience sake is we have roughly 3 million places where, let's say you were to look at, to take one of our chromosomes, okay? Take one chromosome, you would find one place where we got a different letter from dad than we got from mom. Okay, we're heterozygous at that position. Therefore, actually, if we were to look at most of the genetic diversity found around the world today, let's see SciManDan address this. He wants to say this is post hoc ad hoc. Let's look at the data we have today on genetic diversity, okay? You can look at the HapMap data, for example. We know this information. Well, guess what? It's easily accounted for from the biblical model. There are roughly, Matt, as you know, there are roughly about 10 million common variants found around the world. There's a lot of rare variants, of course, but about 10 million common. Which means if we carry roughly 3 million just ourselves, therefore we alone carry about 1/3 of the world's genetic diversity in just us. If my wife and I could hypothetically live for however long, okay, and we could have 1 million children, every single child would be genetically different. None of them would look the same because we're genetically heterozygous. And this is the last thing I'll say, because I just want to destroy this video, right? Leave no stone unturned. Most of these common variants are not disease causing. This is where we can make some predictions as to what's a created allele and what's just due to mutation, right? Most of these common variants, the 10 million, Matt, they're not disease causing. Okay, this makes sense given the design diversity hypothesis, right? God front loads Adam and Eve with pre-existing nuclear heterozygosity. We can then safely assume that these variants are created variants. Okay, if we have 10 million today, common variants, God only needed to front load Adam with about 20 million. Okay, half could have been lost at the flood bottleneck, and now we're left with 10 million. The 10 million we have today. We have Adam, obviously at creation, with more diversity than people have today, but it's not an extreme amount. If we alone carry 3 million, it's not unrealistic to say Adam had between 10 and 20 million DNA differences. So the diversity of our first couple, Adam and Eve, then gives rise to the diversity today, and it can all be explained by basic Mendelian principles, genetic principles. Big A, lowercase a, big B, lowercase b. So I know that was, again, a long rant, but it just shows how little they understand about our model. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
No, I don't think they give enough credit to recombination. You know what I mean? They're literally looking to just mutation continuously, and that's how they devised their skin color arose. Remember, a primate has no pigmentation to their skin. A primate is white if you shave them. So therefore, the first primate had to get some type of a mutation that made its skin black, and then another mutation had to come later and make it pale again. Ironically, so the mutation had to darken their skin, even though primates never get skin cancer, by the way. So somehow it was a smart idea for them to lose all their fur and then get a mutation that caused skin color to form, even though there was no reason to do so whatsoever. And then now this new skin color had another mutation to cause white or pale skin. And that's what we see when we get into the European. And then darker skin is actually needed to be in more sun to make more vitamin D. And primates also don't have that problem. So nonsense down the line when you're looking at it from an evolutionary perspective. But that was a tangent, and my bad. I'll go on. But what was that?
No, I was just saying, no problem, brother. No, it's good. This is good. This is good. It's a deep topic. It's also a topic we're very passionate about, as we've, even written numerous books on it. And I will say, guys, confidently, Matt and I, we've dealt with every objection you can think of from these guys, and especially on this topic. So SciManDan doesn't realize what he's dealing with, which is fun. It's funny. And you can see that when you get into a debate with some of these guys. Like when I debated Conspiracy Cats, he's a smart guy. I like him. He's he's a good guy. He's respectful. It's a cordial debate. But you could tell through his responses, he never heard of this before. A lot of people are not up to date with the science of young Earth creation, the predictions. Like Matt, whenever you're in the comments section, you're a beast, because you get these scoffers that come in. They're scoffing at the video, scoffing at the arguments, and you ask one question. Can you name one single young Earth creation prediction? No response, silence, crickets. You don't know the model. The old Earth creationists are the worst. Look at your inspiring philosophies, your Sentinel apologetics. These guys are worthless. They don't understand. They're arguing against young Earth creation from like the 1800s. I don't know what's up. And then they will always appeal to like your PhDs. Okay, we've debated the PhDs. We've debated Dodgeball Dan many times, debated Dr. Stephen Fellow. We've had all these experts on that are on the evolutionary side, and they all fail. Dr. Dan was brought in for damage control, and he had all this time to prepare probably, and still gave zero testable predictions. Tried to pass off a retrodiction as if it was a prediction. No wonder why he tapped out. So yeah, we're gonna have a blast with debunking these guys. SciManDan, Vice Rhino, Professor Stick, Aaron Ra. These guys, it's funny because they really do have worse arguments than your people like Team Dodgeball, even though they're lesser known. So you're big dog. This is going to be fun. This is going to be fun. Go ahead. That was a rant, but I wanted to point that out.
Yeah. They don't even realize the trouble that they're in. Yeah, they're in so much trouble. But back to the video for now. Let's share. Here we go.
Matt, one thing before you share, because someone in the audience said you've written books. Yeah, I just released. So these are the two books, Independent Origins Handbook. So these are smaller ones. They're more basic, but it covers kind of what we're talking about with independent origins in an easy to understand way. But if you want to get into more comprehensive written rebuttals to the best arguments, I've written this one specifically, Special Creation. Matt and I've got a ton of, pretty much most of these books back here are books we've written, and we've pretty much dealt with all of this. So you can find all these books on our website, but you can also find all our information in the form of articles and also in our videos. We've got 1,100, 1,200 videos. So anyways, yeah, you can find all the books on our website. Check out the Goodreads page. I think we've got 250 reviews with 1 or 2 bad reviews, one of them from Dodgeball Dan. So you see how trickery is. That's a good place to go. Anyways, yeah, I just want to answer that question. Matt, the floor is yours. You can share some more of the video, and I'll leave it to you now, brother. I know you got some good stuff to say.
All right, here we go.
Here's the thing, though. As I said, it's based on a straw man. It's based on a misrepresentation. There's no problem at all. Let me briefly explain why we don't have a problem.
This will be interesting.
With inbreeding like the evolutionists do. Think about it. According to the model of independent origins, okay? According to our model of biblical ancestry, we start with just two people, Adam and Eve. Okay, Adam and Eve were specially created by God, okay? Just roughly 6,000 years ago. And then 10 generations later, we have a second bottleneck of what? Of just 8 people. Okay, Noah, his wife, their 3 sons, and their wives. Okay, so 8 people.
So you've got 2 inbreeding problems then.
At creation, since we hold to the design diversity hypothesis, Adam and Eve would have started with no mutations. No mutations. This goes back to genetic entropy, okay? We take this point of most accumulating mutational load, okay? This point of most genetic entropy, okay? Take that back to a point in time of least accumulating mutations. Okay, a point of least genetic entropy, that would be point of creation. That would be this point of Adam and Eve with no mutations. Okay, so 10 generations later, we now have this second, another benign bottleneck. Okay, it is a single generation bottleneck, also followed by rapid and exponential growth.
The thing is, I'm not really worried about Noah's family for this one because they've come from inbreeding anyway. What I am worried about is the animals. So what you're claiming then, surely, is that every single animal on Earth is the product of inbreeding.
Now remember.
And here we go. Okay, so the first problem he had was that there were 2 bottlenecks, right? He was like, oh my gosh, you guys have a second inbreeding problem now, because he doesn't even realize that the first one is not a problem, being massive genome, massive differences. So a person can inbreed, and you can become more homozygous from inbreeding, which occurs today. And yes, there's some problems, but not when there's so much diversity that it allows for problems. If I have a puzzle in front of me that's 10 pieces big, and I damage 3 of them, that puzzle's in big trouble. It won't, I'm not even going to be able to probably even tell what it is. But if I have a puzzle that's 20,000 pieces and I ruin 3 of them, you won't even notice. So it's going to take a lot more damage and to notice the problem. That's what inbreeding does. It causes the damage, and you break up some of those pieces. It doesn't matter when in the very beginning, because there's no genetic mistakes in the beginning. So we know that these accumulations are happening. We see it when we look at these studies, and we see that there's genetic meltdown going on, but we'll get to that in a minute. And he said, I'm worried about the animals. Don't be. Because when they do place 2 animals on an island and their only option is to inbreed, what do we find? The exact opposite, which was predicted and expected by evolution. Heterozygosity went up because divergence went up. We'll talk about it in a minute, but what happened? 2 animals, right? They come off the ark. They have the entire world to diversify and migrate and reproduce and speciate. That's going to cause the diversity to go up. It increases. That's why we're saying that inbreeding is a problem. It's an inbreeding for your model because you're stuck in a small population in a little place for thousands and thousands of years. That's why inbreeding is a problem. Not for us, because we have the entire Earth to diverge into. We have massive amounts of diversity with lots of room in the world to go and diversify. And that's what we found when we put sheep on the Krulligan Islands. We dropped them off there in 1957. 20-something years later, we go back, and guess what? Heterozygosity went up, and they're all over the island. Within like 40 years, they populated and are just fine. Exactly what we would expect to see if Noah's flood was true and the ark was possible, and exactly the opposite of what evolution expected and against all predictions. So don't worry about the animals, dude. They're fine. We see them, don't we? And they're here because they survived Noah's flood because of Noah. And inbreeding was not a problem for that reason. I'll give it away to you.
One thing I'll say to that is Notice to the audience, and I want to say also thank you so much for the super stickers, for the super chats, guys. You are all amazing, and I really appreciate all the support that you show Ram, Adam, myself, and this ministry. So God bless everybody. I'm glad everyone's having a good time. One thing I wanted to point out that the audience is probably noticing, and for SciManDan's crew that decide to watch this, they'll notice too. Everything we're saying, Matt, just like what you pointed out there on how you can get a massive population increase from just 2, right? This is all based on papers, right? Secular papers, empirical data, empirical information. Isn't it funny how, especially when it comes to testable predictions, which is the gold standard of science, the evolutionists years ago, they're the ones that set that standard, and now they're not meeting the standard. They're not meeting the standard. We are. But see how this rebuttal is, yeah, some joke, some sarcasm. His rebuttal, all sarcasm, no substance, really no papers. And the papers that he did show support our position anyways, which he didn't get. Like, for example, with the Neanderthal. So, yeah. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Here we go.
Inbreeding reveals the hidden reservoir of genetic mistakes. If there are no genetic mistakes, okay, to be manifested to lead to the negative and damaging problems that inbreeding results in, okay, according to our model, Adam and Eve would have had no mutations, and at the flood there would have been some mutations, but not nearly enough to lead to the type of genetic degeneration that the evolutionary model would consist of, because remember, the evolutionists explain all DNA differences as the result of mutations over time. So by the time they get to their bottleneck, okay, they've had millions of years of mutation accumulation, because adding mutations adds genetic diversity. So they explain the origin of genetic diversity, that natural selection can act upon this variation, okay?
But because of natural selection, these mutations don't always end up in a species that survives. Of all the species that have ever lived on Earth, 99.9% of them are now extinct. Natural selection is a bitch. It really is. So those mutations which you claim are accumulating are not. They are now being weeded out systematically and methodically by natural selection.
All right. See, that's another problem that he has in his way of thinking. He's assuming that these near neutral mutations are actually being seen for selection to remove. And as you know, that is not the case, because when we look at all the people that recognize it as a problem, they have a name for these problems, as you can see. This is one of your favorite topics, is the genetic degradation going on in humans. And they invoke selection, and they actually admit that selection is unlikely to be a major factor. So what do you think about that, man?
Well, for one, I challenge him to a debate titled, "Can natural selection remove these deleterious mutations?" The whole point is the nearly neutral mutations, the effectively neutral mutations, are invisible to selection. Selection can't see them, therefore they are only subject to genetic drift. They accumulate over time in the same way rust accumulates on the car. Generally, the damage is unnoticed. And we see this paper upon paper from the evolutionists themselves. They know it's a problem. That's why they invoke rescue mechanisms such as synergistic epistasis, mutation count mechanism. Okay, all of these fail. They're invisible to natural selection based on what we now know about the total functionality of the genome. It means these 100 new mutations per person per generation that are accumulating in the population over time, the majority of them are deleterious. So not only are they invisible, not only are they neutral, they're effectively neutral. Selection can't see them, and yet they're still very slightly deleterious to the organism and to the fitness. Okay, so over time, this leads to genetic damage and eventual extinction. And the inbreeding that we see, for example, with the Neanderthals, mammoth populations, what we see with a lot of your hominid species, right? What we see with your hobbits. Okay, we see this in isolated butterfly populations. Inbreeding is a sneak preview into where we are going genetically as a species. Okay, right now we have filled the globe, of course. So the eventual extinction is slower, but we can see diseases accumulating every single year. So he doesn't get it. And I want to point this out too. I want to point out the fact that I want to go back to the flood bottleneck, okay, where he just still doesn't get he doesn't get what it means to have a bottleneck, what it means to have bad effects due to inbreeding. Even according to our model, if we go back to the flood bottleneck, which reduced the human population to 8 people, well, Matt, we have had only 1,600 years since creation and the flood, meaning very little mutation accumulation. Remember, SciManDan, remember, don't straw man us. Creation, Adam and Eve had no mutations. Okay? That means at the flood, we have very little mutation accumulation. Mutational load would have been minimal. It's the evolutionists that have the problem because the ultimate source of variation for them, and I keep saying this over and over again to get it into their heads, because remember we debated that zoologist, herpetologist, Adam Heap, nice guy, great guy, I love him, funny guy, respectful, but when we debated him, I've debated him 3 times. We did that me and you both debated him on Modern Day Debate. My opening statement, I laid out the design diversity hypothesis, and right off the bat, when I asked, hey, can you reiterate the design diversity hypothesis, he couldn't. And it's not just his issue, all of them, they just don't get it. So mutational load would have been minimal at the flood. So this means a couple generations of inbreeding after the flood would not result in extinction. It's the deleterious mutations that result in the negative effects of inbreeding. And go ahead, brother. What are your thoughts and what are your comments?
Yeah, just look at it from this perspective. We look inside of human beings, we don't see a lot of mutations, but when we look inside where these mutations are accumulating, they're fast. So you can't have deep time with few mutations with a fast mutation rate. You see the contradiction? You're trying to tell us that humans go back 200,000 years, but if you did, with the mutation rate that we see in humans, there's no possible way for that lack of mutations that we actually find. So therefore, 200,000 years is eradicated. It's gone. It's not even an issue anymore. So that's the problem that they have to solve. And then at the same time, they have to figure out, like, how come the vast majority, like 98% of all mutations, are harmful, right? They can point to like a handful of little tiny things, like useless ones. Useless. Like, do you think God gave Adam and Eve the ability to drink milk? No. Why? They don't need that. They all got the fruit trees. They were designed in a garden to come along and eat fruit. So yes, it came along to be a little advantageous later for a mutation to come along and say, like, if human beings over here don't have the ability to drink milk, they're going to die. So sure, that mutation might pop up that would be beneficial like that. But is that the type of mutation that's required to bring a fish to a human being? Is that really what they extrapolate back to? They have to do so much storytelling to say, like, these random, rare, extremely highly unique beneficial mutations that pop up to the other 99 that are bad. They just go, well, those are great. They must outweigh all the bad ones. Really? Well, how come everyone that's getting cancer is having a mutation? That's what's doing it. Where's the good one that's curing these cancers? There's nothing the equivalent of the damage that they're causing that we're finding. They're like the little tiny beneficial mutations pop up, and then 1,000 harmful ones that month. It just doesn't weigh out. The genetic database attributes 6,000 new genetic deleterious mutations every 3 months and no beneficial ones. It takes 4 years on average to find one beneficial mutation, and it's so negligible. They're just like, okay, well, where's this super huge beneficial one that's required? It's just not there. So you have to use logic when you're looking at these beneficial mutations. Most of them are epigenetic to begin with, but then you find, like, okay, well, here's one that might have something to do with cholesterol. Okay, you're going to need millions of them.
Well, and that's the thing. For example, this comment here makes sense, is that even when you get a truly beneficial mutation, okay, they turn out to still be reductive. They still turn out to be functionally compromising. For example, they consider sickle cell anemia a beneficial mutation, even though it's a broken cell, broken protein. Okay, it's reductive. It's not taking things forward. So the point is, they want to say that beneficial mutations can counterbalance the damage done by the accumulation of these low impact, effectively neutral mutations, right? Okay, give them 1, 2, give them 3. It's not going to be able to counterbalance the damage, okay? And those ones that turn out to be beneficial turn out to be reductive themselves. So they want to take their fish to fishermen, okay, through mutations that are overwhelmingly damaging and deleterious. And they have no type of selection that can remove these mutations because they're invisible to mutations. There's no way to counterbalance the damage. And we're seeing that. We see that over and over again. We see that in human populations today. We've seen it in the past. So it's just not looking good for them. It's not looking good for them. And it all goes back to the topic of this video that he's trying to address. They explain the origin of genetic diversity as a result of mutations. Well, mutations are damaging. Mutations are the destroyer and not the creator. They're destruction, not construction. So they're building up over time, and they're not going to take a single-celled like ancestor into a multi-celled organism, into a fish, and then an amphibian, a reptile, okay, a mammal, a bird, man. It's not going to happen. It's not going to, it's all in the imagination. We don't see that today with the effects of mutations. They're damaging, and he has no way to select these mutations out. That's why their bottlenecks are extremely bad. They're prolonged, and these mutations that have been accumulating over time are now manifested. At creation, we have no negative mutations to be manifested. At the flood, we have very minimal mutations to be manifested, and our bottlenecks are one generation followed by rapid and exponential population growth. Adam and Eve have kids, their kids have kids, their kids have kids. That's it. Their bottleneck has a huge population reduced to 2 to 10,000. Those 2 to 10,000 remain roughly 2 to 10,000 for who knows. You can't find an actual number from them. Thousands of years of inbreeding. Thousands of years where you're not seeing rapid and exponential population growth. Thousands of years where you're seeing inbreeding. Deleterious mutations coming to the forefront. This isn't good. This isn't feasible. We see it in the cheetahs today. This is their bottlenecks. This is what they have to deal with. So nothing he's saying is even addressing anything that I've addressed. I don't think he gets it. And I love the fact that a lot of his audience noticed that he didn't get it. Go ahead, brother.
No, that's true. Yeah. No, there's no way that he didn't. Matter of fact, I even guarantee if he were to pop up a beneficial mutation list, he would get like the vast majority wrong. He would be like finding all these epigenetic things, right? Like, it's so funny that they always pointed to the lactose one. I find that hilarious because we're mammals. We all have the ability to digest lactose. It's after weaning that's not even necessary anymore. And the reason that it even became a necessity whatsoever is because some people were living in the desert where there was no food and nothing except for the milk that they needed to keep consuming from their animals. And there you go. And that, boom, they finally got one. You know what I mean? They're like, the epigenetic switch stayed on because of this rare mutation. It's like, right. We already had the ability to digest milk. If we didn't, we wouldn't live. We couldn't even survive as a species because we can't drink.
So like you're saying, Matt, most beneficial mutations are actually turning out to be epigenetic. Epigenetics, it's another layer of complexity. It's another information system on top of the information system that is genetics. And it's all evidence of what? Forward-thinking mechanisms in our genomes. That's why we see rapid evolution, but not the type of evolution they need. Rapid adaptation via these built-in, these front-loaded mechanisms. Okay, the capacity is there already. It's like a spare tire in a car. So SciManDan, what type of evolutionary mechanisms, okay, can evolve that which requires forward thinking, which points us back to the forward thinker, all consistent with the created heterozygosity hypothesis that he completely misunderstands, completely misrepresents, and strawmans. And that's why we call him SciManDan. SciManDan has failed. Go ahead if you got any. And I want to point out, one God is nowhere one. I appreciate the awesome support. Lots more content to come. Matt and I are pretty much doing this full-time. Books, videos, conferences. We got the Genesis Flood Week this week. Tons and tons of great shows planned. Thank you. God bless you for the support. He says, thank you for your dedication and the great education, SFT and Dr. Ramat. One God is now here. I appreciate the support. Guys, let us know too. If you see any videos from any of these guys, Okay, because this another evolutionist bites the dust series. We're going to be doing this. We're going to be focusing on this now. Okay, send us videos that maybe you've seen from SciManDan in the past or something like that. Matt and I will take a few days, look it over, gather some papers, gather some arguments, and we have fun doing this. This is awesome. It's been 2 hours. It feels like it's been 10 minutes. So thanks for the support. I'm going to yield, Matt, because go ahead, brother. Whatever you got to say, or if you wanted to finish off the video and make our final points, go ahead.
All right, let's jump into it.
They explain this as the result of mutations. So now they've got a ton of mutations that are just waiting to be manifested, just waiting to be revealed in order to lead to rapid, essentially, genetic degeneration. Okay, well, we explain the majority of DNA differences as a result of created nuclear heterozygosity. Okay, so according to the biblical model, okay, both bottlenecks, creation and the flood, were extremely brief.
Okay, but there still would have to been inbreeding for that population to grow.
Okay, just one generation. It's a one generation.
Seriously, that's his rebuttal. Hey, Matt, that's his rebuttal. Everything, and I think I've made it. Now, remember, these are independent origins moments. So it's not meant to be highly extensive. He also jumped into independent origins moment 3. If you would have watched 1 and 2, I explain a little bit more in detail, but he just doesn't get it. Yes, there can be inbreeding. Okay, this world, the history of this planet was not all puppies and rainbows. You've got Adam and Eve who are having kids. Their kids are having kids. The Bible says that they had many sons and daughters. So for a few generations, sure, it's what they had to do. But guess what? There were no mutations. So the consequences, the negative consequences of the inbreeding would not have been there. There's no mutations. There's no negative effects. There's no diseases resulting. And by the time we get to Leviticus and Moses, and God instructs his people to not marry close relatives, okay, especially because it's been thousands of years since creation, mutations have accumulated, and therefore doing that, okay, which they did at creation, which they did after the flood event, sure, without the negative consequences. This was God's foreknowledge. This is evidence within the Bible of the Bible's being the inspired word of God. God knew, okay, don't marry close relatives. You've got mutations that have accumulated, and it's going to lead to genetic damage. It's going to lead to disease. There wouldn't have been disease at creation, though. So he doesn't get it. He doesn't get it. I'm not going to explain it all over again either. That earlier we touched on, Matt, how we are heterozygous. We have 3 million DNA differences. We can have kids that are different. Adam and Eve would have been middle brown, capital A, lowercase a, capital B, lowercase b. From there, they can produce every shade of skin on the planet. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, what he doesn't understand is that we're at the end of the road. So we have a lot less of this built-in genetic diversity. That's why inbreeding hurts us more today. That's why the law was given to stop inbreeding at a particular time in Scripture. God gave it to man because he saw that we keep being funneled down. And that's when it stopped. But yeah, like you said, stop explaining it to the guy. Come on.
Well, I will say this here. Tim H says there's no difference between an effectively neutral mutation and a neutral mutation. So, Tim, what it is evolutionists have assumed and still assume that the majority of the genome is junk. Therefore, when these mutations accumulate, if they're accumulating in junk areas, then the junk areas absorb the mutations, making them strictly neutral. No deleterious effects at all. That's been completely overturned. We know that the vast majority of the genome has evidence for function, evidence for activity. Therefore, when these mutations accumulate, they're still neutral to the perspective of the phenotype and to the perspective of selection. Selection still can't see them, but guess what? They're still very slightly deleterious as compared to strictly neutral. They're effectively neutral. They have very small effects on fitness. They're still just slightly damaging, like a single spelling mistake in a book the size of an encyclopedia. On their own, they're inconsequential. It's the buildup of them over time that degrades the message, destroys the book. That's what we're seeing in our genomes. You can't prove, you can't demonstrate that these mutations are strictly neutral anymore. No, They all must have some type of effect on genotype. So I just wanted to address that comment, and the floor is yours, brother Matt.
All right, here we go.
Extended bottleneck like the evolutionary community believes in. And most importantly, it was followed up by explosive growth, rapid and exponential population growth. Okay, this means that most of the original created heterozygosity would not have been lost. They would have retained most of it, okay?
Okay, so super fast inbreeding.
Based on the fact that these bottlenecks were brief and followed up by rapid and exponential population growth. So the whole point is, guys, okay, in both bottlenecks, you'd have almost no accumulated mutations, okay? So no negative, essentially, inbreeding effects genetically.
But there was still only 2 people. Am I missing something here?
Obviously.
Is he saying it's not classed as inbreeding because there was no negative effects? The definition of inbreeding doesn't care about the results of it. It's defined as breeding between closely related people. Now, Adam and Eve, obviously not related, but their children.
What did you mean by that? Obviously not related.
I guess he's saying because they were specially created, they didn't come from parents, so they're not really brother and sister. I'm guessing. I don't know. I'd have to. A few things that he said here is very weird, and I would need to have a discussion with him to, because even when he talks about the definition of inbreeding, we're saying there was inbreeding for a couple generations, as in, you know, people were marrying their close relatives, but there were no damaging effects because there were no mutations that have been built up. So
exactly.
he doesn't. I'd have to almost talk to him because some of his points just make no sense and demonstrate he doesn't get it.
Right. It just demonstrates, too, that he just decided to debunk a video without understanding anything about what you actually believe or understand. It's just like he picked a random video and didn't watch the series, even though we made the series very short. But, you know, I mean, just look at the animals. You know, he brought up animals. They would have trouble. Well, then why don't they? How come when we see experiments, they don't have the problem? As long as they can expand and diversify, there's not a problem. If they don't expand and diversify, there's a huge problem with inbreeding.
Well, and here's I'll point out this one thing, okay? When you have designed organisms, when you have Adam and Eve created de novo with internal genetic diversity, then we don't have to explain today's diversity as all being the result of mutations over time. That's the evolutionary assumption. That's how they explain the origin of genetic diversity. 2 individuals, my wife and myself, or Matt, you and your wife, we have what? We have 4 chromosome sets. We alone have the ability to allow for incredible, vast amounts of genetic diversity, which then can be used by what? Natural selection acts upon this genetic variation. Recombination, gene conversion as well, gives us new combination of chromosomal sets every generation. Natural selection can also use this internal diversity that was designed at creation for adaptive purposes. We don't need evolutionary deep time, and we don't need diversity originating mechanisms like mutations. He doesn't get it. He doesn't get it at all. Go ahead, brother.
Not at all. It's like he's not even trying. He made this too easy.
Cain
too
was
easy.
Adam's eldest son.
Oh, no, go ahead. I was just, go ahead, brother. I'll mute.
Was A1, who was his sister. Okay, what about Abel? His wife was Lalua, who was, Cain's twin sister. Surely Seth did better. By the very definition, they were inbreeding.
Okay. That means that the extremely limited genetic diversity is most consistent with the biblical base model. When God created 2 people, automatically this restricted genetic diversity. And all of this genetic data that we now have did
Matt, pause it for 2 seconds, brother. So this Tim guy in the chat, clear troll, completely corrected. And we've also got a quote here. Thanks, Shmuel. I hope I'm saying that right, brother. Kimura. Under the present model, effectively neutral, but in fact, very slightly deleterious mutants accumulate continuously in every species. There you go. Slightly deleterious, slightly damaging. They're low impact. That's what it is. Tim, you want the link? You want a debate tonight? Bring it on. Accept correction. It's not even that difficult. Gosh, go talk to Dodgeball Dan if you want to earn next year's Dodgeball Award, Golden Dodgeball. Go ahead. I just wanted to point that out, brother. Go ahead.
Or go get your Nobel Prize. You know what I mean? Go grab that sucker, because all those people are on that list. You know, that list of people. Kondrashov, send Kondrashov an answer. He wrote a whole book on trying to figure out that problem, and you got it. The internet atheist got the answers on this channel.
True. Okay, this is why we don't have to resort to fairy tale and far-fetched mental inventions in storytelling, okay?
And that is the most hypocritical thing I've ever heard someone say. I think we're done on this one.
That's how he ends it.
Oh, man. If this is the best they got, how did SciMan, he seems like a decent guy, whatever, but how did he get 500,000 subscribers if this is the quality of his rebuttals?
Imagine if you showed him like Mendel's accountant, his mind would just pop. He wouldn't even know what to do.
No.
Never heard of it, so therefore it's not true.
All of the papers that we showed today, the huge numbers of papers that he'll either ignore them, never heard of them, say that they're not supporting what we're saying. I don't know. But that was like, if I was an evolutionist, especially on the fence, and I watched that video, I would immediately convert to young earth creation. So Godzilla Freak says he got it off flat earth videos. Well, maybe SciManDan needs to stick to flat earth videos. He can leave the real science showing independent origins to us, because he's misrepresenting. And SciManDan, I'm sorry to tell you, that was really, really weak. And we're happy to continue this back and forth, but you're going to have to do a lot better than that. Go ahead, Matt. What are your thoughts?
Oh yeah. I mean, he'll realize he'll watch this and pretend he didn't. But I mean, when your own side are against you, that's pretty bad. I don't think I've ever gone into my comment section and been like, "Hey, what are you talking about? That's not what we say." I've never seen it anywhere. So, I mean, we kind of go out of our way to be like, let's figure out what we're actually going to argue against today. What do you say? You know, should I actually look at the opponent's argument, or should we just go live and make fools of ourselves? I don't know. It is Tinfoil Tuesday, right?
Right. It's funny because it's the evolutionists these days that have to wear the tinfoil hats. And Matt, really briefly, did you want to touch on the genetic diversity also in animals that demonstrate the same truth of Adam and Eve? Right? As humans, we have low genetic diversity overall, demonstrates we came from just two people a few thousand years ago. They'll often say we don't have the same data to support animals. Well, what have we learned through the most recent DNA barcoding? And did you want to touch on that a little bit, brother, just to make it leave no stone unturned, as we say?
Sure. I mean, I can even just share screen because I don't have anything ready for that. But I mean, here, let's look real quick. We got we can go to Google real quick, and we can go to a chicken. mtDNA mutation pedigree, and you know they haven't done pedigree studies on all animals, of course, but they've done some, and guess what? Compared to exactly the evolutionary model, predictions were bad for them yet again. The pedigree study found that they were exact opposite of what evolution predicted. They were 15 times faster in their mitochondrial mutation rates. And that, again, contradicts the evolutionary model. Now, this is just looking at mtDNA mutation rates, right? And this is just looking at chickens. You can go and you can look at reptiles. You can look at penguins, which were 8 times faster. All of their predictions based on what is the observable rate is completely contrary to what we expected. And then we get into the CO1 gene, and which is in the mitochondria, it's one specific region, and we go, wow, look at that, low genetic diversity. So what do? They go, well, we're not concerning ourselves with dates, so we're just going to say it was 200,000 years ago because that's when the bottleneck was, right? No questions asked, just assuming that it was. But what did they find? They went around and they go, look at that. Every animal has this problem. Why in the world would a penguin and an anchovy and a sardine have the same bottleneck? It doesn't even make sense. So they looked in their geological record, no evidence of anything. They go, well, oh, well, it happened. So not very good, not a very good explanatory thing. And guess what? Humans, right out of that same bottleneck, right? So it's not like they said, oh, well, humans evolved later from Neanderthal on their own. No. They literally believe that a Neanderthal went into a bottleneck, a global bottleneck, and modern day man came out the other side. Think about that for a second. Think the logic, the mental gymnastics that you need to think that way. I mean, it's preposterous. And then to say that, oh, well, Eve obviously wasn't the first woman. She was one of 10,000 other women. Well, where are they? Where's the evidence for them in the fossil record? Nowhere. Where's the evidence of the millions of women that would have lived before her? Well, nowhere. What about the genetic evidence? Well, there is none. That's why we trace it to her only. Oh, okay, so there's no evidence for anything. And then you go,
yeah, there's no evidence for anything. It's
right.
It's all storytelling, hypothetical, fancy storytelling. They got great imaginations.
Yeah.
Keep going, brother. Keep going. Good stuff.
Yeah, well, they go, okay, well, you could do the numbers. You go, well, if you go, okay, well, let's give it to him. Let's say she was one of 9,999 other women. Well, you go, well, what happened to them? They go, well, they gave birth to boys. Okay, wow, never heard of no creature on earth has ever done that. That's a first. Or all the other women died. What were they at the mall? Did they invent a mall that collapsed during an earthquake? Like, what's going on? Mm-hmm. Nothing makes any sense. Like, it's such a rescue device that it's actually pathetic when you actually just step back and go, well, what happened? Well, that's the rescue device they had to come up with.
It's rescue device after rescue device after rescue device. That's what it is.
It is. It's embarrassing, really, because they admit they don't have the data, they don't have the information, but they believe it more than anything. And look how much they fight against it, right? They'll fight against yours, which has the information, right? We're looking at the observable data, and they'll go, well, you guys are wrong, but believe my storyboard instead. What are you talking about? Yours is falsified.
Time to pull up the storyboard, right?
Yeah, it's like, why would I believe yours? The book that I studied when I was in school is in the garbage. It's all wrong. And the book that you have now in 20 years is going to be in the garbage because it's going to be wrong. You're just going to keep changing it. Everything's going to be falsified.
Well, what book is he reading? As we showed, his claims, especially at the beginning, when it comes to the origins of humanity, are wrong, even according to the people that he would look to as authorities, right, from the secular literature. Just a paper in 2021 saying that we cannot look at the fossil record in genetics and pinpoint the origin of humanity. Therefore, I want to point out that, guess what? Let's look to our model. Well, not too far outside of Africa would be exactly where what was, Matt?
The Middle East, where the
Tower of Babel would have been.
Right.
The Tower of Babel dispersal would have taken place. You got people groups, the confusion of languages, people going to different parts of the earth. Yep. And when it comes to genetic diversity found in the Middle East, it's very high, isn't it, Matt? It's high in Africa, but it's also very high in the Middle East, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's why when you get away from the Middle East, it goes down in every direction. So, I mean, seems pretty logical to conclude that was a pretty big hub for genetic diversity and split, exactly what we would predict. Now, how come everything does keep landing on that? Why? It doesn't have to. None of this has to be true, but yet it keeps doing it. Our model wasn't just like invented. We didn't go, let's change the Bible to this because the evidence seems to appear to go right there. No, it's already there, and we're just going with it. We're just like, that's amazing. Look at this. And then we find, wow, the story lines up yet again. Let's see what predictions would be based off if the Bible were true for that region. Boom, there it is again. Prediction solved.
Well, like you said, and we've discussed this in the past, and I was recently rewatching a video by Dr. Rob Carter where he pointed out the same thing. Northeast Africa is the highest genetic diversity, and genetic diversity goes down as you go westward in Africa and as you go southward in Africa. Now, given how high the diversity is in the Middle East, right, Matt? That means the Middle East could have easily been the origin of humanity, or at least where people would have finally went out from Babel and migrated around the planet, right? This cannot be excluded. I mean, that 2021 paper suggested that, you know, there's multiple evolutionary hypotheses, and you can't exactly pinpoint the exact location. So given the levels of diversity in the Middle East, could have certainly been the Middle East. That means, Matt, and we've spent a great deal of time on this, maybe we'll touch on this as we start to wrap things up. If we did come from the Middle East, then that means Africa could have been founded by all it would have had to been was founded by a large group of people who already had a large amount of genetic diversity, many working PRDM9 sites that you were talking about that go hand in hand with recombination rates. We also got patriarchal drive, right? Where these extremely old biblical patriarchs would be passing on a ton of mutations. And Noah, given how old he was when he was having children, would have passed on a ton of mutations. Many mutations in a single generation is adding a ton of diversity to the population. We could also have, it was Rob Carter. He was pointing out that you could have wave after wave after wave, essentially, of migration that would have affected Africa, meaning more genes are making their way into Africa over time. So then you've got more diversity there. And we know African populations seem to be able to hold more genetic diversity over time. They got more working PRDM9 sites. And I mean, we could go on and on over this stuff, but it's the biblical origins model of ancestry that is making the predictions, making accurate retrodictions. It's very, very strong. It's a great time. It's an amazing time to be a young Earth creationist. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, if anybody ever wants to see my predictions based on the CO1 gene mutation rate based on young Earth creation, you can go right to the Creationist Clothing and go right down. It's the second article from the top, and you can see the predictions that I made based on genetic diversity still increasing today. Now think about it. If deep time were true, what would be happening inside the mitochondria? They would be very full of mutations. They're not very full, so we know genetic diversity is also going up. But guess what? Mitochondria also have a mutation saturation point. So the fact that it hasn't reached mutation saturation also proves that it's very young, because we don't see the turnover rate going on. So we have multiple forms of evidence to say that we can make predictions based on the increase of genetic diversity, and that's exactly what I've done based on young Earth creation. So that's pretty fun. And I think we'll probably jump into some fun stuff in a minute, as I think we should probably hit the comments from the channel.
Yes, let's do that. Let's do that, because we've got a ton more videos, guys, to in the future we're going to be dealing with. And thanks so much, Jungle Jargon, for the support, the super chat. You guys are awesome. God bless all of you for the support. Raymond says, SciManDan, please respond to another SFT video. Please, Simon, just pick one or two things in this video, because this is what the evolutionists do, right? They'll take a video that's too hard for them to debunk. Then they'll pick like one or two things out of the 2.5 hours. Okay, maybe I'll try and address this. Okay, SciManDan, pick two things that you think you can maybe address. Do it, and then we'll have a back and forth, because this is too fun. This is too fun. So thank you. And LPP's super chat, LPP's after show is going to be soon. So therefore, we're going to wind it down, hand it over to Matt Mann for some final laughs, as we a lot of the things we talked about were technical, so we're going to wind it down in a fun manner. Laughter is the best medicine. Go ahead, Matt.
All right, we're going to start with the first one. You read it out loud. That's all for you.
Wait, is that guy Superman? I'm pretty sure without those glasses, he's Superman. Wait, which video was that on? Was that on Dan's video, SciManDan's, or mine?
Yeah, he's talking about you. That's a SciManDan's channel. I thought it was you.
Because SciManDan's, his comment section has 3,000 comments. So if I had thin skin, a comment section like that might drive me into early retirement or depression or something. But to me, I was just cracking up all these comments. I never saw that one though. That's funny.
Yeah, that was a good one. All right, here. Next one. I am just in my lack of words of how stupid his God argument is. Adam and Eve had 3 sons, Book of Genesis. How many do you want? They banged their own mother. It's quite funny how the Bible is being rewritten every time it says something that doesn't support it. What? What? Rewritten.
Do you see kinds reproduce after their kinds? Because these are the comments that are resulting from SciManDan's video. They're equally bad and equally hilarious. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm throwing on more questions. I like Praise jumped in there for you.
Yeah.
He's like, get in there and debate him.
That'll boy Praise.
Go get him. Go get him, Praise. Probably the top one. I feel the general misconception comes from the fact that he thinks mutations are bad. We covered that one just now. So that was probably something to answer. Dan, your information seems a bit outdated. Check upright ape species.
Right. His own people correcting him.
I know. Standing for truth. He knows a lot of big words, but what his argument boils down to is because magic.
It's like godless engineer magic.
Right. Yeah. He didn't hear any of your opening. He's like, so God did it? Here we go. I think what his point is here is they were inbreeding, but it's fine because they were genetically perfect. You see, he even had to tell his own guy that's debunking. Right. He goes, you're missing like the entire point being made. But that's because he focused on the math of your sarcasm.
Right. So next time I do a video, I better not throw any sarcasm or exaggeration in there because SciManDan is going to focus on that for the majority of the video. I just love right there. That was a great comment. His own supporters are like, Dan, you missed the point of the video. And his video got 70,000 views. So whatever it was, 5 nights ago, 6 nights ago, my phone was blowing up with comments to that Independent Origins video. And I was like, what's going on? And it made its way up to like 700 dislikes. And then I realized, okay, SciManDan made a video and his video is 70,000 views, which means 70,000 people are seeing the devolution of SciManDan to StrawManDan. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing, brother. Go ahead.
It's deserving. That's what you get when you actually argue against something you have no idea what's going on. I can't even imagine doing it. But we got a couple more here, and these are more for just answering their mindset. If Adam and Eve were the first humans, according to the Bible, they only had 2 boys and one killed the other one. So that means no more people. See, they don't grasp that the Bible, the scriptures are following 2 lineages. They're following Seth's and they're following Cain's. And the reason why is because these are the stories. Seth's line is what leads to Jesus. It's not following every single one of Adam's children. If it did, the Bible would probably be that thick. You know what I mean? So it's following the lineages that matter for the story that needs to be portrayed. It doesn't talk about it. It says in the Genesis, if you would have actually read the thing, that they had many sons and daughters. It doesn't say that they just had 3 boys and one killed. You know, that's what happens when you are arguing against a subject you don't know. That's one of the biggest problems because you just get full of nonsense. And then
like you said, brother, if only they were to just read it. And not go to some atheist website or anti-young earth creation website and get their arguments. That's what these comments are. So that was a great response. Go ahead, brother. Yeah, go to the next.
There's another one. It says, but the Bible says that Cain got his wife from the land of Nod, which had people from where? No. Cain brought his wife with him. They got married in the land of Nod. Nod is the Hebrew word that means wandering. It's just a place where he was wandering, and it was to the east of Eden. It wasn't a city. That's the misconstrue that you get from random websites that don't know anything about the subject at all. So it's just completely wrong mindset. You're going into it thinking that's what it says because that's been, reiterated so many times, but it's just a talking point that doesn't actually exist. The land of Nod means wandering. It means that's just where he was because that's what he was forced to do. He was outcast and he was forced to leave the land where his parents were because of the vile thing that he did. So now he was wandering around, and that's what he did, and that's where he married his wife. He didn't find her there. It was just his sister or cousin.
It says he knew his wife. He knew his wife in the land of Od. That's where they. It's like our brother in his image says here. Again, finish reading chapter 4 and start reading chapter 5. Sheesh, start reading context, Evo. So yeah, what you said there was perfect. I'm glad you picked out those comments, brother Matt, because those are typically even theistic evolutionists and old earth creationists are using those arguments today in 2021 as if they haven't been dealt with. Right, Matt? Isn't that amazing?
It is. Yeah, but that's just how I think little they actually follow what's going on. They want the easy way out, right? They're looking for easy people. Though they screw up targeting our channel, as he's going to realize. But I think that's why we like to do the attacking, right? Because they're just out there just promoting absolute nonsense. And that's fine. You can believe whatever you want. There's no problem with that. But when you're going around saying that we're wrong when you don't know anything about it, you're going to get destroyed. Sorry. Yeah. That's the way it goes. Here's a funny one. The guy is clearly intelligent, talking about SFT. It just baffles me that intelligent people can buy into these beliefs and take their religious fairy tale crap so serious. Like you didn't investigate anything, right? Like you just went, oh, I read the Bible. That's obviously true. Okay, time to close up shop. I won't investigate any other religion or anything else out of that. But and I don't know, but look at that comment below.
Do you have any science qualifications, Dan? I ask on every video, yet you never answer. Just your abusive sock puppets.
That's pretty funny.
I love how anytime, like that guy said, SFT is clearly intelligent. I don't know why intelligent people believe this kind of stuff. They always want to say, like they say that about Dr. Kurt Wise, Richard Dawkins did. It's like, if you're intelligent or you're educated or you got the qualifications, but you believe the Bible, then you're just religiously motivated, or that's the only reason why. It's funny how they resort to that. I just, like Dr. Jinton, we point out that he's, a Harvard graduate, he's got testable predictions, and they'll just scoff at the fact that, they'll say that he's religiously motivated or we aren't really interested in the truth. And we see those all the time, Matt. So that's a funny one.
It's kind of ironic to me because they admit that you're smart, but then admit that you probably don't know what you're talking about. It's like, well, you just admitted he's smart, and now you don't want to investigate why he believes what he believes. You're just going to just take your hook, line, and sinker because the majority believe it. The majority, if you were going to, like 1,000 years ago, you would have followed majority and the earth would have been flat. So you'd have been a flat earther. So you don't just follow the majority. You just go with where, like you go, okay, this makes sense, and it makes more sense than this one. And you should probably go, even if you don't want to believe, because that's where we come in, right? We just go, well, obviously this can't be true. We're looking at one thing and the evidence is telling us the other. So what are we going to do? We're just going to say, okay, well, why is all the evidence say this? If evolution were true and humans have existed, we'll just give them the benefit of the doubt. Humans went through a bottleneck in Africa 200,000 years ago. They've been branching out and spreading around the world ever since. They've been diversifying and going around the world, and humans were repopulating. Okay, so now you want me to believe that humans went around the world and diversified, and for 195,000 years, they didn't do anything that we're doing today. And then all of a sudden, in the last 5,000 years, boom, mathematics, boom, civilization, boom, boom, oldest trees in the earth, point right there. Boom, the lifespan of recorded history, 5,000. Writing systems, 5,000 years ago. All civilizations seem to pop up 5,000 years ago. More examples. Genealogies going right back. You want me to believe that humans worldwide just did all of that separately? Didn't know anything about any math, calendars, writing systems, languages, nothing. Didn't know any of that stuff. And then 5,000 just randomly, exactly when we say the flood happened, you want me to believe that that's not true now? I'm sorry, that takes a whole nother level of faith that I don't have. It's just, I can't do it. I have to go with logic. logic wins. I'm sorry, every time.
You nailed it there. We don't have enough faith to believe in what people like SciManDan are pushing. As you can tell, we just hit the 2.5 hour mark, so we're going to wind it down here so people can go to LPP's channel. But as you can see here, we put forth arguments in favor of our position and also arguments debunking the universal common ancestry model with the support from a number of papers, a number of sources. I mean, Matt alone has flashed a dozen or more onto the screen. So if SciManDan wants to respond, he's got a lot of work to do, and I have a feeling he doesn't want to do the work. Therefore, a video like this will probably go untouched, but it's going to show that people like SciManDan, people like these popular YouTube atheists, they don't have science. They don't have science. They got pseudoscience. We got the science. It's a good time to be a creationist, guys. So be proud of that. Comments coming in. Christ has risen. Amen. Tomorrow we're not going to be doing any streams. Next week starts the Genesis Flood Week. So yeah, I want to thank everybody for the amazing support, the super stickers, the super chats. This was a lot of fun. Matt and I were going to pick out another video soon to be back with you guys. And have some fun again like this. So we'll pick one out. SciManDan actually did another video on us a while ago. Maybe we'll get to that one next. So thanks everybody for joining. We still got 50 people in the chat. So it's great to see that you guys are enjoying it. We could probably do this all night, but let's all head on over to LPP's after show. Matt, you got any final words, final thoughts, brother?
No, just a reminder, if anybody wants to see those things that we brought up, the thing SFT was talking about, if you want to see Eve's sequence, you can go to Creationist Clothing and go to the articles section. And I've tried to compile everything there. And I took the notes out of the top of the studies, like the abstracts, and give it a little example. And then if you want, you can click on it and go to the study and read the technical aspects, right? I don't want to bore people because some people might not even understand it. So you can read through and grasp what's going on. And then if you want, jump over to the study. It's got a bunch of different links there, a lot of the things that we covered today. And if you want anything, just leave a message under this video below when this thing goes live, and we'll send the links to anything. Mendel's accountant, the patriarchal drive. We can supply all the evidence for all of this. So that's it.
Awesome. Great last words. A couple of people asking, got here a little bit late. Yeah, we've been going for 2.5 hours. So make sure you rewatch right from the beginning. I think we had like 2 minutes there of technical difficulties before we got her going. So I think we might even just remove that 2 minutes. Hey, Matt, we can do that through the studio and then it can all go smooth. And the other thing was, yeah, some people were asking what video was it from SciManDan? I just added it into the description box. SciManDan's video. You can watch that video, then watch this video. We do play it, actually. We played the whole thing. So we hit every point. And yeah, that being said, guys, God bless everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks so much for the support. We'll see you guys Monday for the Genesis Flood Week. And SFT and Mattman are out.